Chapter 1955. Slightly taken aback, Qin Feng looked at Saint Emperor Pangu. Could it be that the Saint Emperor wants to compete for the Ganges River world? Qin Feng felt a little strange. He would not have doubted it if an ordinary Seven Tribulation sovereign wanted to compete for the Ganges River world, but the Pangu Saint Emperor was different. The Saint Emperor had just taken the Miliuo dimension Great Cosmos into his pocket, so he should not be able to fight for other territory for the next 1 or 2 Chaos eras. Moreover, with the Miliuo dimension Great Cosmos, the value of the Ganges River world to the Pangu Saint Emperor should not be as great as imagined. The Pangu Saint Emperor did not need to do such a thankless thing. Your Majesty Pangu, don't worry about me. I am not very interested in the Ganges River world. Qin Feng shook his head. If the Ganges River world could be annexed by the Spirit Sea world, the benefits would be great. However, Qin Feng's eyes were now all on the 9-colored island. That's good. Hearing this, the Pangu Saint Emperor smiled. Why? Your Majesty Pangu wants to compete for the Ganges River world? Qin Feng looked at the Pangu Saint Emperor with a strange gaze. The Pangu Saint Emperor's expression was a little strange. Meeting Qin Feng's gaze, the Pangu Saint Emperor immediately knew that Qin Feng might have misunderstood. He immediately shook his head and explained, I am not free to fight for the Ganges River world now. I just don't want you to get involved in this mess. I know from other sources that if there is no mistake, the whirling dimension Great Cosmos will soon undergo another great change. The Pangu Saint Emperor's expression was a little gloomy and serious. Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. Even existence like the Pangu Saint Emperor did not dare to get involved in such a drastic change. Qin Feng's eyes flashed, and he instantly had a guess in his heart. He looked at the Pangu Saint Emperor with a shocked expression. Did something happen to the whirling dimension Great Cosmos? The Pangu Saint Emperor looked at Qin Feng with a hint of surprise in his eyes. You're much smarter than I thought. You guessed right. Now that the high-level rulers of the whirling perfect world are returning, I believe that it won't be long before the Ganges world changes hands. Apart from that, rumor has it that the existence who has been in seclusion ever since he achieved his Tao will most likely come out soon. Even the Pangu Saint Emperor felt a sense of heaviness when he mentioned that existence. He didn't even dare to mention that existence's real name. Qin Feng knew very well who the Pangu Saint was referring to. True Saint Whirlpool. Only an eternal true Saint could make a top-tier high-level ruler like Pangu Saint Emperor and a universe master so fearful and respectful. If the whirling perfect world attacked the Ganges world, Qin Feng could still ignore it. If true sage Po Suo came out of seclusion, it would give Qin Feng a huge amount of pressure. Qin Feng's face was somewhat gloomy. Clearly, the perfect whirling world had attacked the Ganges world in order to prepare for true sage whirling Suo to come out of seclusion. Once true sage Whirlpool came out of seclusion, the entire whirling dimension Great Cosmos would be under her control, moving around under the nose of an eternal true saint all day long. One could imagine the pressure Qin Feng and other high-level rulers would be under in the future. Ordinary high-level rulers could leave their own dimension and head to new dimensional great cosmoses without eternal true saints. However, Qin Feng couldn't. As a high-level ruler who cultivated the world style, he could leave the whirling dimension Great Cosmos, but he couldn't leave the world he cultivated in. It was too difficult to make a world leave the dimensional Great Cosmos it was born in. Only high-level rulers who had undergone 7 tribulations and above could help. Once he gave up the world he cultivated in, it was equivalent to denying the eternal truth he had comprehended, unless he reincarnated and cultivated again. However, if he didn't give up, Qin Feng only had one choice, which was to move around under the nose of an eternal true saint in a perfect immortal world. At that time, once true sage Whirlpool came out of seclusion, she would definitely refine the whirling dimension Great Cosmos and bring it into her core area of control. Thinking about how he was about to move around the core area of an eternal true saint, Qin Feng's expression turned ugly. In that case, it would be extremely difficult to even protect his life, let alone achieve the Tao. Saint Emperor Pangu looked at Qin Feng's expression and roughly understood what Qin Feng was thinking. However, he shook his head in his heart. In fact, he thought highly of Qin Feng in his heart. He was young and had broken through to the divine ancestor realm in less than 1,000,000 years. He had even comprehended a trace of eternal truth. As long as such a young expert didn't die prematurely, it shouldn't be difficult for him to achieve what he did. He might even have the chance to see the threshold of an eternal true saint. However, his luck was too bad. He actually encountered True Sage Whirlpool's awakening. If True Sage Whirlpool had awakened one chaos era later, Qin Feng might have been able to break through to the seventh tribulation great cosmos realm before then. It's too late. With True Sage Whirlpool's strange personality, she might not tolerate a disciple of the Purple Firmament Immortal Palace who had comprehended eternal truth. Thinking about True Sage Whirlpool's personality, Saint Emperor Panga's expression turned a little strange. There was also a trace of fear in his heart. He wished he could never set foot in the Whirlpool Dimension Great Cosmos again. Before True Sage Whirlpool had achieved the Tao, she had a bad habit that shook many dimensional great cosmos. That habit made many high-level sovereigns extremely fearful. Indeed, powerful existences were increasingly afraid of meeting this strange, eternal true saint. Saint Emperor Pangu looked at Qin Feng's expression, and a trace of pity flashed across his heart. Living under the nose of that eternal true saint in the future, there would be fun to watch in the future. He looked at Qin Feng hesitantly. Little friend, if you have a way, you should leave the Whirlpool Dimension Great Cosmos as soon as possible. After saying that, Saint Emperor Pangu shook his head slightly. His figure flashed and flew into the space-time dimensional gate beside him. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the Whirlpool Dimension Great Cosmos. Looking at his figure, he seemed to be in a hurry. There was even a trace of embarrassment. As Saint Emperor Panga left, the fog that shrouded this part of the galaxy dispersed. In the Ganges world, many ancient existences once again saw Qin Feng's figure. However, there was a thoughtful look in their eyes. Although the outcome of this battle was unknown, it seemed like this new sovereign had won. At least, that was what it seemed like on the surface. However, the extreme mystic Saint Emperor had already disappeared. Even a sixth tribulation high-level sovereign couldn't do anything to this new high-level sovereign. In the Ganges world, many sovereigns among the Sacred Mountain saints had different expressions. They looked in the direction that Saint Emperor Pangu had left. Although Saint Emperor Pangu's departure brought bad news to Qin Feng still decided to continue with his original plan. Magnificent rays of light appeared around him and penetrated into the depths of the Ganges world to communicate with the inner world. However, in an instant, Qin Feng's expression changed, and a trace of discomfort appeared in his eyes. I can't enter the inner world. Chapter 1956. Stepping on the Milky Way, endless light surrounded him, turning into a nebula that spread to the distant horizon. Qin Feng's face darkened. His eternal saint power seeped into the void, tearing apart large patches of deep layers of the void, but it felt like a bottomless pit. No matter how many layers he tore, he could not penetrate into the inner world. When he tore into the depths, layers of pitch black, terrifying things appeared, like the stench of sewers. The layer of black water was so deep that even after Qin Feng's eternal saint power had transformed, it could only enter and not come out. It was as if he had fallen into a dead sea, unable to even cause a bubble. Qin Feng was not unfamiliar with the essence of this layer of black water of unknown depth. It was very similar to the Void Mother stream that flowed through the various dimensions. But compared to the black water deep within the Void Mother stream, this layer of black water appeared to be diluted. No matter which part of the void Qin Feng tore, in the end, he would be blocked by this layer of black water. After trying a few times, Qin Feng gave up. The power of the Void Mother stream can not only promote the evolution of the world, but can also promote the perfection of the world. Now that the power of the Void Mother Stream has merged with the Ganges world, with my strength, I can't break through in a short time. As he thought about it, Qin Feng's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. His current situation was already bad enough. At this moment, Qin Feng had an intuition that the treasure on the nine-colored island might very well be his last chance. If he missed this opportunity, he was afraid that he would only have one path left. No matter what, I must enter the inner world, even if I have to turn the Ganges world upside down or even destroy it. Qin Feng's eyes flashed fiercely as he muttered in his heart. At this time, he would show no mercy to anyone who dared to block his way. Qin Feng looked toward the south of the Ganges world. His expression changed slightly, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. A moment later, he disappeared on the spot. Half a year later, the Ganges world shook violently. One of the 8 heavenly realms of the Ganges world, the southern heavenly realm, had changed hands. The extreme, profound sage emperor disappeared, and in his place was the new ruler who had arrived in the eternal river world half a year ago, the lightning ancestor. He was a disciple of the purple firmament immortal palace, a true saint disciple, and a 5 tribulation high-level ruler. It didn't take long for the information regarding the lightning ancestor to be placed on the desks of some ancient high-level rulers. For a time, the originally calm situation of the Ganges world was now turbulent. His identity as a disciple of a true sage might be able to intimidate ordinary high-level dominators, but it wasn't enough to intimidate the high-level dominators of the eternal river world who had undergone 4 tribulations and above. On the contrary, it was the power he had displayed that easily suppressed the extreme, profound holy emperor that struck fear into the hearts of many high-level sovereigns. The extreme mystic sage emperor definitely wasn't a nobody in the many-dimensional great cosmoses. Many high-level sovereigns were watching, waiting for someone to make a move against the new lord of the southern heavenly territory, or for the new lord of the southern heavenly territory to make a move against other high-level sovereigns. Aside from the lord of the southern heavenly realm, the lords of the other 7 heavenly realms were also making their moves in secret. In the southern heavenly territory, on a divine mountain that seemed to be on the same level as the heavens and earth, Qin Feng stood in the air and looked over. Countless worlds seemed to be floating at the foot of the mountain. Within the clouds and mist, one could see the boundless scene of the gods overseeing the laws of heaven and earth. This was the Xuanwu Divine Mountain, where the extreme mystic sage emperor used to be. Now, it had become Qin Feng's temporary residence. After defeating the extreme mystic sage emperor, Qin Feng naturally occupied this place, and he didn't encounter any resistance. When Qin Feng arrived, the extreme mystic sage emperor's trusted subordinates might have received a hint from the extreme mystic sage emperor. They had already packed up their belongings and fled with their subordinates, returning to the dark dimension, Great Cosmos. In all fairness, this saved Qin Feng a lot of effort, as well as a lot of killing and cleaning up. Qin Feng muttered to himself as he looked at the various scenes in the mist. The various great worlds might have sensed the changes in the upper echelons of the gods, and the gods began to act recklessly, attacking each other. Chaos appeared in many worlds. Amidst this chaos, the southern heavenly territory seemed to be still expanding, as if it was affected by an unknown force. Not only the southern heavenly territory, but also the 8 directions heavenly realm, the 8 directions heavenly territory, and countless worlds were changing. The power emitted by the Ganges River world was already very powerful. It was even more majestic than some forces that had undergone several perfect calamities. It's the power of the Void Mother Stream. Qin Feng was certain. No matter what, I must find a way to stop its expansion. The stronger the Ganges River world is, the slimmer my chances of entering the inner world are. Qin Feng's eyes were cold. He occupied the southern heavenly territory not to enjoy the blessings of providence here, nor to compete for the position of the Ganges River world's master. Instead, he wanted to use this as a foundation to steal and weaken the power of the Ganges River world. He stretched out a hand, and a golden flame appeared on his palm. The golden light in the flame grew larger and instantly turned into a golden gourd. A hint of indifference flashed in his eyes, and with a flash of golden light, it was like a divine dragon that sank into the clouds below the sacred mountain. The golden gourd turned into a divine dragon that swam in the clouds, and at the same time, it did its best to swallow the countless worlds in the clouds. The mouth of the golden gourd swallowed, and at every moment, countless worlds turned into swimming fish that fell into its mouth. The more it swallowed, the more golden light that the golden gourd transformed into became. It was like a golden flame, and even the dragon's body turned into a golden texture. It was extremely rich. Rumble. As if it had sensed the presence of a thief, heaven and earth shook. Countless bolts of lightning appeared above the clouds, and the world shook violently. Countless bolts of lightning landed on the golden dragon's body, and countless dragon scales were blown off. Flesh and blood flew everywhere, but the golden gourd did not care. It only focused on swallowing and recovering in an instant, and its divine power grew stronger and stronger. Qinfeng looked at this scene coldly. Such a tyrannical theft of the world's origin would naturally attract the wrath of the heavens. Unfortunately, the golden gourd was fated to cultivate with him, and had also been tempered by a trace of the eternal truth, sacred fire. Its quality was extremely high, and the heavenly wrath of the Ganges river world was unable to do anything to it at this stage. The golden gourd swallowed at an extremely fast speed. Qinfeng, who was fated to cultivate with it, could feel a gentle and vast power flowing into the world, nourishing the entire Spirit Sea world, causing the Spirit Sea world to undergo a transformation, and its power to slowly increase. Even his body benefited greatly, and the realm of his soul slowly increased. However, this speed of devouring could not compare to the speed of the growth of the southern world's origin. Qinfeng used his mind to activate the power of the golden gourd, but compared to the growth of the southern world's origin, there was still a large gap. No, this speed is too slow. I have to think of a way to increase the speed of devouring the Ganges river world. Qinfeng frowned. Chapter 1957. Soon, Qinfeng raised his eyebrows, and a strand of divine consciousness flew into the Spirit Sea. After passing through the Spirit Sea, heavenly core of the Spirit Sea world, it spread to the Spirit Sea 8 scenery sky realm, heavenly domain, and God domain. Rumble. Visible to the naked eye, there seemed to be billions of creatures chanting ancient scriptures in the world of the golden gourd. The entire world of the Spirit Sea condensed into one, and the dazzling golden light shone brightly. The golden gourd turned into a terrifying golden divine sun, and merged with Qinfeng's mind. Qi! The speed was more than 10 times faster than before. In Qinfeng's eyes, the growth of the southern world was finally stopped. Billowing origins fell into the Spirit Sea, and the many worlds in the southern world started to wither and fall into the gourd's mouth. Massive amounts of origins fell into the Spirit Sea, and billions of worlds were born. The twin world tree in the center was not in the center. Dimensional energy surged, and dimensional energy filled the air, transforming into boundless dimensional scenes. This twin world tree was on the verge of transformation. It might only need an opportunity to transform into a dimension tree that even the masters of the universe would treat as a treasure. The golden gourd showed a giant worm that was trying its best to empty the southern world, causing it to wither and turn into a barren land. Eventually, it would be destroyed. Qinfeng's mind merged with the golden gourd and the many subtle changes in the Spirit Sea, as well as the changes in the Mi Luo dimension's origin laws in his mind, made Qinfeng feel that his soul realm was improving at a fast speed. In the center of his soul realm, the strand of eternal truth that he had comprehended seemed to be absorbing nutrients from his comprehension, nourishing that strand of eternal truth bit by bit, making it more abundant. In this change, Qinfeng caught a glimpse of an opportunity to become a sixth tribulation advanced dominator. In fact, he had resisted the origin calamity in the Mi-Luo dimension and comprehended the changes in the origin laws of 3,000 dimensions. He already had the foundation of a sixth tribulation. This time, after devouring the southern world's origins, the transformation of the spirit sea, and a part of the whirling dimension's origin laws were comprehended by him, and he became a sixth tribulation advanced dominator. 1,000 years had passed in the southern world. Since the lightning ancestor hadn't appeared, the many high-level sovereigns who had been secretly monitoring the changes in the southern world breathed a sigh of relief. This kind of peace was hard to come by for many high-level sovereigns. Now that they were in the midst of the great calamity of the chaos epoch, the origin laws of the whirling dimension were revealed. They were even more obvious than usual. It was the best time to comprehend the origin laws of the whirling dimension. Most of the high-level sovereigns weren't willing to risk their lives against others. However, the surroundings of the Ganges world were not peaceful. Not only were there more and more powerhouses from other dimensions participating in the great calamity of the chaotic era of the whirling dimension great universe, but they had also come to the Ganges world. In addition, there was also a rumor that caused the Ganges world, which was originally filled with turbulent undercurrents, to become like a boiling volcano that could erupt at any time. The whirling perfect world had already set its sights on the Ganges world. True Saint Whirling Sual was about to come out of seclusion and refine the whirling dimensional great universe, plundering a batch of origins and leaving before true Saint Whirling Sual came out of seclusion. The surrounding worlds were in turmoil. However, not everyone believed this rumor. Many high-level sovereigns didn't agree or disagree. They even thought that some powerhouses with ulterior motives were stirring up a war to suppress this trend. 5,500 years later, in the sacred mountain, sacred realm of the southern world, Qin Feng suddenly woke up from his seclusion. A new milky white halo shook behind his head, and his eyes flickered. Among the clouds of the sacred mountain's sacred realm, countless golden lights could be seen with the naked eye enveloping the countless heavens in the southern world. In the divine realms, the spiritual energy in the heavens was withering day by day. Many sacred mountains and blessed lands were drying up, and most of the regions had turned into deserts. Wherever the golden light passed, living beings tried to stop this terrifying absorption. However, after thousands of years, most of them had indeed turned into withered bones. Only a small portion was absorbed into the golden gourd and reincarnated. In just 5,000 years of absorption, the desertification of the southern world had developed to an irreversible extent. High up on the sacred mountain, Qin Feng looked coldly at the clouds and mist, the regions that had turned into deserts, and his eyes flickered inexplicably. He had a part of the spirit sea world's future memories. He had experienced the cruelty of the age of chaos, and he knew very well the pain. However, he had no choice but to do this now. In order to survive, he had to live for his future. However, out of a part of his bottom line, Qin Feng still retained a trace of mercy. Many living beings had died, but he had collected most of their life imprints. After entering the spirit sea world, he could quickly reincarnate. It's not enough for me to devour the origin of the eternal river world alone. It's best if I can incite more high-level powerhouses to plunder it. Unfortunately, in these 1,000 years, even if I try my best to incite the ambitions of ordinary 3 and 4 tribulation high-level sovereigns, it's just a drop in the bucket. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes and looked at the southern world that was gradually drying up. Traces of cold light flashed in his eyes. As time passed, the pressure on him increased. The Chaos Era's Great Tribulation lasted from 1 million years to 360,000 years. Now, the Chaos Era's Great Tribulation had already begun for about 150,000 years. In other words, if he was fast enough, true Sage Pasual would soon awaken. It seems that I have to find a way to involve the other 7 Heavenly Realms Masters as well. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes, which flashed with an extremely dark and obscure cold light. In order to survive, he was willing to do anything, even if billions of living beings had to be buried with him. There were 8 worlds in the eternal river world. Apart from the southern world, the other 7 heavenly realms and world lords were not good people. They were either natives of the great cosmos of the whirling dimension or top-level, high-level sovereigns from the great cosmos of other dimensions. Among them, the strongest ancient race masters born in the shattered dimension great cosmos all had people overseeing them. For example, the master of the northern world, the myriad evil ruler of the chaos evil god race. The master of the southeast world, the most ancient sovereign of the creation god race, the creation divine emperor. The master of the western world, the supreme ancestor of the ancient god race, ancient god Yuani. The like true lord of the northwest world and the Tai Yu divine emperor of the northeast world were top-level, high-level sovereigns. None of them was weaker than the extreme mystic divine emperor who oversaw the southern world 5,000 years ago. These 7 top-level sovereigns are all masters of their own regions. Their wisdom is as vast as the sea. The will of such people is difficult to change, and their wisdom is difficult to deceive. Even if my wisdom is not weak, it will be extremely difficult to involve them. Even if I tell them that true sage Pasua is about to awaken, they might not be willing to believe me. It's a pity that the Panga Divine Emperor is unwilling to get involved in this mess. Otherwise, if I could join forces with him, things would be much simpler. Qin Feng had a headache, but in the next moment, he had a new idea. Chapter 1958. Qin Feng thought of an acquaintance. The Southwest World Master, Leaf Fire Ancestor Luya. Beneath the Divine Mountain, Qin Feng's eyes flickered as he looked at the clouds. Rumble. The golden gourd exerted its strength, and the last of the southern world's origin energy was sucked in. Countless divine domains and heavenly domains withered, turning into terrifying wastelands. No more spirit chi could be found. It was as if the southern world's last bit of vitality had been forcibly sucked away. Seeing this, the golden gourd turned into a streak of golden light and entered Qin Feng's body, vanishing from the spot. The southern world is completely ruined. At this time, many ancient existences hidden in the depths of the southern world's void sensed this scene. The entire southern world was filled with a deathly stillness, destruction, and doomsday aura. The world no longer grew, and even the spirit chi had withered away. The world's fortune had been severed. The lightning ancestor is truly vicious. In less than 10,000 years, the southern world has been ruined by him from its peak of prosperity to its current state. So many heroes and mighty figures have fought against him, but they were all killed by him in cold blood. Many high-level sovereigns who were hiding in the corners watched this scene coldly. Their gazes contained traces of anger, resentment, and confusion. As peak high-level sovereigns, they should not kill the goose that lays the golden egg. This was a complete waste of the southern world's potential. No matter what, the southern world will not be able to recover before the chaos epic's calamity ends. This place has lost all value. Many high-level sovereigns shook their heads and left the southern world. Even some experts who cultivated the laws of doomsday and destruction were not willing to stay. The world's fortune had been sucked dry, and the origin energy was empty. Only the black water's energy could be found. Even high-level sovereigns who cultivated the laws of destruction could no longer benefit from it. The southeastern world. 2 imposing existences sensed the changes in the southern world, and their expressions turned gloomy. As world masters, the southern world's sorrowful cries were ringing in their minds at all times. The southern world has been destroyed, and its potential has been lost. One of the imposing high-level sovereigns spoke with an indescribable expression. Could the rumors be true? True sage Pasua is about to awaken? The other high-level dominator's expression changed slightly. This was a high-level dominator wearing a tall hat and a wide belt. He had a majestic aura that seemed capable of swallowing everything in all directions. Any high-level sovereigns would feel as if they could see the creation of the world, the division of the primordial chaos, and the birth of civilization. The creation Holy Emperor was the strongest expert of the creation god race. He was also the founder of the creation god race, one of the top 10 races in the great cosmos of the whirling dimension. He was also an unparalleled expert in the whirling dimension great cosmos who was said to have the highest chance of becoming a reserved true sage in all dimensions. The all-dimensional preparatory true sage ranking was a ranking created by an ancient true sage, the Tai true sage. The ranking included the high-level rulers of the all-dimensional great cosmos. This was a powerful list that was extremely famous even in the many-dimensional great cosmoses. For example, existences like Heavenly Yuan Saintess and Pangu Saint Emperor were all famous experts on the reserved true body sage list. The whirling dimensional great cosmos was a dimensional great cosmos that wasn't ranked at the top. There were only 2 experts who could be ranked at the top. The first was True Sage Whirling Su. True Sage Whirling Su'aw had once been ranked 3rd on the reserved True Sage ranking and had now become an eternal True Sage. The other was called Ancestor Quan. He was also an extremely powerful ancient existence, a 7th tribulation high-level sovereign. He was ranked around the top 100 on the reserve True Sage ranking. He was extremely powerful. However, it was said that an accident had occurred during his 8th perfect tribulation, and he had died. The creation Holy Emperor of the creation god race was a high-level sovereign with the highest chance of becoming a reserved True Sage after these 2 peerless sovereigns. The other high-level sovereign wasn't a nobody. He was the master of the Western world, the dimensional demon god of the whirling dimension great cosmos, and the ancestor of the ancient god race, ancient god Yuani. Many experts knew that the ancient god race and the creation god race were one of the top 10 races in the chaos of the whirling dimension great cosmos. However, very few people knew that these 2 ancient sovereigns were the first batch of dimensional demon gods in the whirling dimension great cosmos. The creation demon god and the space demon god. These 2 demon gods were among the 2 most powerful demon gods of the first batch. Upon hearing the creation Holy Emperor's words, ancient god Yuani's expression changed. At this point, even with ancient god Yuani's intelligence, he had to admit that there was some possibility. If that wasn't the case, no high-level ruler would do such a thing. However, this was only a guess. Ancient god Origin first raised his head, his eyes flickering. It's also possible that the high-level sovereign felt that it wasn't possible for him to control the eternal river world, so he left after making a fortune. That's not impossible. The creation Holy Emperor nodded, a hint of seriousness in his eyes. However, regardless of whether that message is true or false, we have to prepare a path of retreat. After a slight pause, a haze flashed through his eyes. You and I both know that person's character. At the mention of that person, ancient god Yuani's pupils constricted, and a hint of fear appeared in his eyes. True Sage Whirling Su'aw, the former misery sea demon god, had once been the nightmare of many dimensional demon gods. This misery sea demon god had been the lowliest 3rd-generation demon god, but he had walked ahead of all the 1st-generation demon gods, devouring the intelligence of the vast majority of the dimensional demon gods in the whirling dimension great cosmos. In those terrifying and dark years, if not for the fact that True Sage Whirling Saw had been held back by some other powerful existences in the other dimensional great cosmos, the 2 of them would have been dragged out by that terrifying existence long ago. Even so, their true bodies had been scattered, and they had to circulate through several chaos epochs before recovering their divine abilities. But after a moment, ancient god Yuani felt a sense of unwillingness in his heart. Now, the eternal river world had undergone a mutation. Ever since the birth of the whirling dimension great cosmos, such a change had rarely happened. If they could control the eternal river world, their cultivation would take a huge step forward, and they might even enter the all-dimensional true sage list. Even if they left the whirling dimension great cosmos, they would be able to roam freely in the dimensional sea. Ancient god Yuani's eyes flashed. We should still have time. Generally speaking, an eternal true sage would enter seclusion for at least 3 to 5 chaos epochs. True Sage Whirling Su'aw has only been in seclusion for 2 chaos epochs. She might not wake up. Wealth comes from danger. At the end of his sentence, ancient God Yuani's eyes were filled with a feeling that heaven and earth could not be moved. In the southwest world, Qin Feng's speed was extremely fast, and it didn't take long for him to reach the boundless flaming mountains. Chapter 1959. In the depths of the blazing mountain, the moment Qin Feng's aura appeared in the southwest world, the Leaf Fire World Lord opened his eyes. His gaze was somewhat pensive as he looked at the intersection between the southwest world and the south world. A moment later, the Ancient One opened his eyes as well. The two high-level sovereigns exchanged a glance and smiled. I don't know what this southern world lord is planning, but he devoured the origin energy of the southern world. I'm sure he's plotting something against me. The Leaf Fire Patriarch, Luya, smiled bitterly. He turned to the Ancient One and said, I've been holding back from paying him a visit all these years because I didn't want to get into trouble. But trouble still came knocking. You can't hide from it. The Ancient One chuckled, but he still had some doubts in his heart. It wasn't just the Ancient One. Luya also had some strange thoughts. As the Pangas Saint Emperor's close friends, the two of them had also received the news of what the Pangas Saint Emperor told Qin Feng. But even if true sage Pasuo were to awaken, she would have to wait until the end of the Chaos Era. There was still a long way to go before the Ganges world. They could easily wait for the Ganges world's origin energy to grow to a peak before reaping the harvest and retreating. The two high-level sovereigns couldn't understand why Qin Feng had devoured the southern world in such a hurry. Not long after, a divine general came to report that an esteemed guest had come to visit. The two high-level sovereigns didn't delay and went to welcome the guest personally. Far away, at the foot of the blazing divine mountain, the two high-level sovereigns saw a black-robed young man waiting inside a pavilion. From afar, Qin Feng raised his head and saw two high-level sovereigns walking down the divine mountain's fiery red steps with majestic steps. Although they didn't use their divine will to spy, the 6 rings of light behind their heads couldn't be hidden. They were shaking the northwestern world and drawing upon the boundless origin energy. 2 sixth tribulation sovereigns. At the same time, Luya and the Ancient One also noticed the 6 vibrating rings of light behind the black-robed young man's head. The power radiating from the black-robed young man's body was no weaker than theirs. What a fast cultivation speed! This thought flashed through the minds of the 2 high-level sovereigns, and their hearts trembled. Senior Luya, Senior the Ancient One, it's been a while. Both of you look more energetic than ever. This southwest world is so big that even Qin Feng is envious. Within the pavilion, Qin Feng stood up with a smile on his face. His somewhat affectionate voice spread far and wide. Luya, who was walking over, paused when he heard that. He looked at the ancient city's ruler beside him and smiled bitterly. This was a big plague. If he could, he really wanted to find an excuse to get rid of this big trouble. Little brother Qin Feng, you're too polite. Although Luya is much older than you, Brother Qin Feng's strength has surpassed me. You've also comprehended a trace of the eternal truth and are a true saint seed. How would I dare to call myself senior? If you're willing, you could just call me Luya. Luya smiled and waved his hand slightly. Then he said warmly, however, you're the southern world's lord. It's my honor to have you here when you're so busy. Luya's expression was polite, but there was a hint of distance and wariness in his tone. Qin Feng acted as if he didn't see it and smiled. In that case, Qin Feng has overstepped his boundaries. Brother Luya, you might not know, but I'm no longer the southern world's lord. The southern world is now a desert. Oh, is that so? That's a pity. Luya's expression was just right, but he was even more wary. This Qin Feng had come all the way from the southern world. He was probably bringing big trouble. Qin Feng's eyes had a hint of a smile, as if he didn't see the shock in Luya's eyes. News of what happened in the southern world had already spread throughout the entire Hunghe world. He didn't believe that this old fox Luya wouldn't know about it. Brother Qin Feng, it's been a long time. I thought that we would never see each other again after the Mi-Luo dimension. Who would have thought that you've already caught up with us 2 old fellows when we meet again? Oh, I should say that you've surpassed us. At that moment, The Ancient One stepped forward with a smile on his face. Qin Feng had already noticed the Ancient One and nodded his head in greeting. "Brother Ancient One, you're too kind." Qin Feng obviously had something to say. Although Liu Ye didn't want to get involved in any trouble, he still invited Qin Feng into the depths of the Celestial Mountain. Liu Ye looked at the Ancient One beside him. Fortunately, he was here. Liu Ye calmed down a little. In the main hall, the three high-level sovereigns were toasting each other. The main hall was filled with singing and dancing. Goddesses danced in flames, and auspicious auras filled the air. Phoenixes, fire dragons, white deer, and Pishio roared. It was a grand scene. Although the three sovereigns weren't close friends, they had gone through the Luo dimension universe together to help the Pangu, Saint Emperor, open up a new dimension. They had gone through many life and death situations together. Compared to ordinary people, they trusted each other more. Qin Feng's eyes flashed. He wanted to say something a few times while they were toasting each other, but Liu Ye was tactful and evasive. On the seat of honor, Qin Feng's gaze was admiring the many flame goddesses dancing in the hall. However, from the corner of his eyes, he would occasionally glance at the calm, sovereign Liu Ye, who seemed to be completely engrossed in the song and dance. As if sensing Qin Feng's gaze, Liu Ye smiled and raised his wine cup. He seemed to be enjoying himself. "This old fox should know my current situation. He already knows that I cultivate a world-type secret technique. The Pangus Saint Emperor told me that true sage Pisuo is about to awaken. It's impossible that he didn't tell these two. Is he waiting for a good price? Or is he really worried about offending true sage Pisuo from the perfect immortal world?" Qin Feng thought to himself. "Looks like I can't test him anymore. I have to force out this old fox's true attitude." Qin Feng glanced at the dancing goddesses in the main hall. He suddenly smiled and said, "I wonder what Brother Liu Ye thinks of the current 8 worlds and the Ganges world." Hearing this, Liu Ye's smiling face froze. On the other side, the Ancient One's expression changed slightly, and he tightened his grip on the wine cup in his hand. Liu Ye was about to change the topic, but Qin Feng didn't give him the chance. "Brother Liu Ye, as the Lord of the Southwest world, don't you think that there are too many lords of the 8 worlds in the Ganges world?" Qin Feng wanted to continue speaking, but at this moment, Liu Ye's expression had changed. He waved his big sleeve, and the many flame goddesses that were dancing in the hall suddenly disappeared into his sleeve. The many divine beasts stopped their cries, and only the auspicious aura and multicolored light lingered above Luanzhou. The atmosphere suddenly became cold and cheerless. The smile on Liu Ye's face had disappeared. He frowned and looked at Qin Feng. "Little friend Qin Feng, what is your purpose in coming to find me this time?" Chapter 1960. It's very simple. We'll rob them. Apart from my southern world and your southwestern world, there are still 6 other worlds in the 8 worlds. We'll visit them one by one, and the world essences we snatch will be split evenly between the 3 of us. That should be fair, right? Qin Feng looked at Liu Ye and the Ancient One. The hall fell silent. Liu Ye and the Ancient One stared at Qin Feng with their mouths agape. They hadn't expected Qin Feng to be so direct. Moreover, he'd asked to rob the other 6 worlds right away. Those 6 world masters were no pushovers. Every one of them was as powerful as the 3 of them, and they were all veteran 6 tribulation sovereigns. Cough, cough. Liu Ye coughed dryly. His throat felt dry, and he laughed dryly. "Young Qin Feng, you're not joking, are you? Why? Do you think the division is too small? That's negotiable." Qin Feng didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at the 2 sovereigns and chuckled. Liu Ye's gaze darkened, and he looked at the Ancient One. At the same time, the Ancient One also looked at him, and Liu Ye fell silent. "Young Qin Feng, it's not that we're not tempted, but what you're saying is a little." The Ancient One sighed and said seriously, "Those 6 world masters are all powerful, and they have strong foundations. Not only can we rob them of their world origins, but if we let them escape." The Ancient One paused and didn't say anything else. His meaning was clear. Liu Ye's eyes flickered, and he stopped himself. What the Ancient One was about to say was what he was most afraid of. Six tribulation sovereigns weren't ordinary high-level sovereigns. They had strong foundations, and they weren't like Qin Feng, who had comprehended a trace of the eternal truth. His future was uncertain, and those six tribulation sovereigns wouldn't dare to seek revenge. They were different. If they let those six tribulation sovereigns escape, they might seek revenge in the future. There is no need for the two of them to become mortal enemies with those six tribulation sovereigns for the sake of these benefits. The two of them knew a little about Qin Feng's situation, but they didn't think that their relationship with Qin Feng had reached the point where they would risk their lives for him. If true sage Pasa hadn't awakened in this era, they might still be able to negotiate for the sake of this person who had comprehended the eternal truth. However, the two of them weren't willing to risk their lives for a six tribulation sovereign whose future was already bleak. Luya said with a calm expression and an indifferent look in his eyes, "Young friend, we won't tell anyone about this, but you'd better find someone else." This was already an order for him to leave. Standing up from his seat, Qin Feng calmly looked at the two high-level sovereigns. He felt a bit of disappointment in his heart. However, the two high-level sovereigns' rejection was within his expectations. Forget it. It's reasonable that these two are unwilling to help. Next, I can only... Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness, but he remained calm. Since the two of you aren't willing to get involved, I'll take my leave. With a flash of light, Qin Feng's figure disappeared from the hall. Luya and the Ancient One looked at each other helplessly. They could tell that Qin Feng was in a very bad mood. He was afraid that after this, the little friendship between the two sides would be completely gone. Luya and the Ancient One looked a little speechless. In fact, the two of them had high hopes for Qin Feng. Although they were facing a desperate situation now, they had never thought that Qin Feng would be able to overcome their fear and escape from the whirling dimension Great Cosmos one day. Everyone in the Milieu dimension Great Cosmos had thought that this person was dead for sure, but in the end, he had still created an unbelievable miracle. Not only had he escaped, but his strength had also increased greatly. However, the possibility of this happening was too small. It was so small that the two high-level sovereigns didn't have the slightest confidence. Do you think that after he leaves, he will take the risk to attack the other world lords alone? The Ancient One suddenly asked, his eyes flashing with a strange light. Luya's expression didn't change as he looked into the distance. Obviously, the possibility of this happening wasn't very high. Although Luya didn't want to admit it, he knew in his heart that even though they were both high-level six tribulation sovereigns, Qin Feng was definitely much stronger than him and the Ancient One. Moreover, he had comprehended the eternal truth. In a real battle, even if he and the Ancient One joined forces, they might not be a match for him. There's no need to think about it. This has nothing to do with us anymore. With a calm expression, Luya waved his hand, and the goddess of flames, dressed in light gauze, reappeared in the hall. Some of them had their throats cut, and as their skirts fluttered in the wind, one could occasionally see the depths between their legs. A ray of light traversed hundreds of millions of miles. Not long after, the continuous divine flame mountain was left far behind. Only the red clouds on the horizon covered half the sky. Qin Feng paused and turned to look in the direction of the southwest world. His eyes flashed. His original plan was to team up with the Ancient One and Luya to deal with the other six world lords. If the three of them were to assassinate the other world lords together, they might be able to kill 2 or 3 world lords before the other world lords noticed. As long as they took the opportunity to kill 2 or 3 world lords, the remaining world lords wouldn't be a problem. Qin Feng could have swaggered and sucked the Ganges world's origin dry. Without its origin, the Ganges world's inner world would be defenseless, and he would be able to invade it. Unfortunately, this plan had failed. Luya was much more conservative than he had imagined. Next, I can only carry out the second plan. Qin Feng's eyes flashed coldly. The second plan was much more brutal than the first. Rumble. As if the chaos was shaking violently, Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. He raised his head and looked around. There seemed to be countless sounds of destruction, and a terrifying sword light suddenly appeared from the depths of space-time. Amidst the sounds of destruction, hundreds of millions of voids turned into terrifying rays of light and swept toward him. Someone had launched a sneak attack. When he realized this, Qin Feng realized that the surrounding space-time seemed to be enveloped by the terrifying chaos. No matter where he rushed, he couldn't escape from the destructive sword light above his head. Qin Feng's pupils constricted. He saw a terrifying existence in the depths of the Ganges world. It was an extremely majestic existence that was stored in the depths of space-time chaos. Boundless chaotic aura surrounded him, as if he had merged with the Ganges world and the boundless chaos of the whirling dimensions. His appearance was that of a strong man. His upper body was that of a human, and there were towering dragon horns on his head. His lower body was that of a dragon, and he held a strange battle sword. Behind his head, there were 7 vast light circles that shook the universe. This was a ruler of the 7 Tribulations Dragon Clan. It was highly likely that he was a peerless expert of the Dragon God's alliance. His body turned into a sword light that pierced through the universe. The mournful light was like thunder in the sky. In an instant, it was above Qin Feng's head. Even his soul realm was trembling. Chapter 1961. The soul realm of a 7th Tribulation Sovereign was far superior to that of a 6th Tribulation Sovereign. Their most powerful ability was the soul power that could tear apart a dimensional great cosmos. This was a qualitative change compared to a 6th Tribulation Sovereign. Under the dimensional seal ability of a 7th Tribulation Sovereign, ordinary 6th Tribulation Sovereigns would be suppressed and killed in a single move. This was the fundamental reason why 7th Tribulation Sovereigns were superior to other sovereigns. However, Qin Feng wasn't an ordinary 6th Tribulation Sovereign. He had comprehended a trace of the eternal truth. Qin Feng had an essence that couldn't be suppressed by a 7th Tribulation Sovereign. Even a 7th Tribulation Sovereign couldn't compare to this essence. A golden bell appeared in his hand and instantly transformed into a huge golden divine bell above his head. It was indomitable. Clang! The crisp sound of the bell reverberated throughout the Ganges world. Formless golden ripples collided with the terrifying chaotic sword light above his head. However, the chaotic sword light instantly split the golden ripples and slashed the divine space-time bell above his head. Buzz! Buzz! A loud noise shook the void. The divine space-time bell emitted a golden light. Under its vast power, a large portion of the galaxy was annihilated. The space-time within 100 million miles shook. Qin Feng's divine bell was above his head. His mind was one with the divine bell, and he could feel that his mind was being pierced by the cold sword light. A terrifying sword mark appeared on the divine space-time bell's golden walls. He actually blocked it. From afar, Lord Destruction Dragon stared at the huge golden bell in astonishment. This was an extremely powerful Khanate dimensional treasure. He could even feel a trace of a Khanate Tao artifact's charm from this treasure. He's a 6th Tribulation Sovereign. He actually completed a breakthrough in such a short time. Lord Destruction Dragon thought to himself and frowned slightly. According to the information provided by the Dragon Lords of this dimensional great cosmos, the Lightning Ancestor should be a 5th Tribulation Sovereign. However, so what if he has broken through? He's just a slightly bigger ant. Oomph. Lord Destruction Dragon's gaze landed on the golden divine bell and sensed the rich Khanate space-time Tao aura. Moreover, I can obtain a treasure with the potential to become a Khanate Tao artifact today. As he spoke, a hint of a smile flashed in his eyes. In an instant, he crossed his hands in front of his chest, and a ring of black-gray divine light appeared in his palms. The light condensed and turned into a round bracelet. Between heaven and earth, destruction and creation are one. Everything in the world is in a cycle. From the moment everything is born, it is destined to come to an end. The infinite ring of termination. The moment the black-gray bracelet was formed, Qin Feng felt a terrifying power suddenly appear. It seemed to envelop the entire Ganges world in an instant, imprisoning him within the ring. Countless primordial creation and ultimate destruction cycled, obliterating all living things. He couldn't move his body. He could only watch helplessly as he was obliterated by the terrifying and infinite ring of eradication. Eternal truth power? Qin Feng's expression changed when he felt the majestic power. However, he soon felt that something was wrong. This majestic power is strong, but it doesn't have a core like my flawless truth power. It's just an empty shell. Qin Feng raised his eyes and looked coldly at the seven tribulations sovereign above him. Do you think you can kill me by relying on a mere, hypocritical, eternal truth power? If you want my eternal spiritual treasure, you'll have to take it with your life. Flawless truth, everything has flaws. As long as there are changes, there will be weaknesses. Qin Feng's divine consciousness flashed and seemed to merge with the countless galaxies in the Ganges world. The terrifying and infinite ring of eradication in his divine consciousness seemed to have countless weaknesses. Qin Feng's divine body shook, and he broke free from this restriction. His figure flashed, and like a beam of light, he passed through the terrifying and infinite ring of eradication. In a single step, he appeared in front of the Destruction Dragon Master. He actually escaped from the Destruction Dragon Master's infinite ring of eradication. In the starry sky, an imposing figure in a five-colored robe looked at this scene in disbelief. The Five Elements Dragon Master. This was one of the three original Dragon Masters of the whirling dimension Great Cosmos, who had left with hatred. After witnessing the fall of the Terror Dragon Master, the Five Elements Dragon Master immediately contacted the Dragon Gods Alliance and finally contacted the Destruction Dragon Master, one of the five strongest Dragon Masters in the Alliance. The Dragon Lord of Destruction had always been interested in the Ganges world. The Dragon Lord of the Five Elements had come into contact with the Dragon Lord of Destruction, which was exactly what he wanted. The moment he made a move, the outcome changed so drastically. Bang! The Destruction Dragon Master carried the golden bell and charged forward violently. His face was already stuck to the divine time and space clock. Along with the terrifying sound of the clock, the Five Elements Dragon Master could clearly see that the Destruction Dragon Master's calm face had turned green, and his nose was bleeding profusely. The golden bell hit the Destruction Dragon Master millions of times in an instant. The Five Elements Dragon Master and some of the high-level sovereigns who were looking over broke out in cold sweat when they saw the violent bombardment. "You're arrogant. You're arrogant." Qin Feng muttered as he pressed down on the Destruction Dragon Master's body and beat him up. The Destruction Dragon Master was almost driven mad. He unleashed all the power of a high-level Seven Tribulation sovereign and turned it into a terrifying wave of saint power. The power of the core's infinite ring of termination was unleashed to the extreme. However, it was all in vain. He didn't seem to be able to resist at all. Admittedly, the eternal holy energy of a seventh tribulation sovereign was extremely terrifying. It could shatter the stars, shatter time and space, and overturn the universe. However, it seemed to have lost its effect in Qin Feng's hands. He was suppressed in all aspects. Many high-level sovereigns were in a daze, and they couldn't wrap their heads around what was happening. They couldn't understand what was happening. A high-level 6 Tribulation Sovereign was suppressing a high-level 7 Tribulation Sovereign and beating him up in all aspects. This was simply overturning the rules of strength between high-level sovereigns. This is the power of the eternal truth. It's not that the Lightning Ancestor is stronger than the Destruction Dragon Master. In the 8 heavenly realms and 8 worlds, some high-level 6 Tribulation Sovereigns realized something, and their expressions turned solemn. Any high-level 6 Tribulation Sovereign could enter the 6th Tribulation Realm. Their comprehension of laws and accumulation of cultivation realm had already surpassed most high-level sovereigns. They had already embarked on a journey to understand the eternal truth. What kind of eternal truth is this? Several high-level 6 Tribulation Sovereigns widened their eyes. Their divine senses didn't even care about accidentally injuring others as they tried to deduce the eternal truth's changes trying to comprehend some of its mysteries. Even if it was just a trace of the eternal truth's mysteries, it was still a huge improvement for high-level 6 tribulation sovereigns. They might even be able to touch the threshold of the eternal truth. Chapter 1962. However, this kind of comprehension was destined to be futile. If the eternal truth was so easy to comprehend, there wouldn't only be a few dozen eternal true sage seeds in the dimensional great cosmos. Outside the whirling dimensional great cosmos, in a place where chaotic time was distorted, 4 terrifying existences were confronting each other. The 3 of you should go back. My little brother has a personal grudge with the dragon race in the whirling dimensional great cosmos. I'm afraid it's not good to bully him with numbers. The Pangu Saint Emperor stood in the dimensional time. Although he had the appearance of a middle-aged man and couldn't be said to be handsome, he had a majestic power that made the heavens and the dimensions tremble. There was a strange phenomenon behind him, as if an extremely majestic dimensional great cosmos had materialized behind him. There was a boundless power that tore everything apart and suppressed the boundless space-time dimension. On the other side, there were 3 extraordinary existences who wore black, white, and red emperor robes and had lofty dragon horns on their heads. Each of them had a strange phenomenon, and their auras were faintly discernible. Countless chaos dragons and time dragons were born in the distorted chaotic time. Billions of dragon race members roared and sang praises to these 3 majestic existences. The Dragon Gods Alliance had the 5 strongest dragon lords in charge. Every dragon god had the original dragon body and was also the strongest among the billions of dragon race members in the dimensional great cosmos. Other than the Destruction Dragon Lord, who was being beaten up by Qin Feng, 3 of the other 4 dragon lords, the Gully Dragon Lord, the Absolute Freeze Dragon Lord, and the Hope Dragon Lord, had all arrived. The 3 dragon lords frowned and looked at the Pangu Saint Emperor, who was blocking their way. There was a hint of fear in their expressions. When the Destruction Dragon Lord was being beaten up, many dragon lords of the Dragon Gods Alliance who had been paying attention to the changes in the Eternal River world had already noticed. Other than the Dragon Lord who was in seclusion, the remaining 3 dragon lords, the Gully Dragon Lord, the Absolute Freeze Dragon Lord, and the Hope Dragon Lord, had all rushed over to help. However, they were blocked by the Pangu Saint Emperor just as they arrived outside the whirling dimensional great cosmos. The 3 7 Calamity Dragon Lords were very clear. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, Pangu's Saint Emperor had been no weaker than any of them. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, Pangu's Saint Emperor had become the master of a great universe, and his power had increased tremendously. It was very likely that the 3 of them together would not be a match for him. The 3 7 Calamity Dragon Lords looked in the direction of the whirling dimension great cosmos with helpless looks on their faces. They could only hope that the Dragon Lord of Destruction would fend for himself. Lord Destruction Dragon was completely dumbfounded. Qin Feng carried the time and space divine clock and fiercely rushed forward. The vast sound waves shook his soul and numbed it. His strong saint body was like mud. Although he tried his best to counterattack, every counterattack failed. It was as if his entire body was filled with weaknesses, and he was completely restrained. Dragon Lord of Destruction vaguely knew that this might be the power of Qin Feng's eternal truth, but he was powerless to break this power. Qin Feng's strength was very weak compared to a 7th Tribulation Sovereign. The difference between a 6th Tribulation Sovereign and a 7th Tribulation Sovereign was huge. However, his strength was still able to injure a 7th Tribulation Sovereign. After too many times, Dragon Lord of Destruction's soul realm began to loosen, and it seemed like it was about to fall. As the 2 of them fought, one could see the stars in the sky shaking and falling one after another. There were even huge stars that could not withstand the fluctuations of their battle and exploded. Lightning Ancestor, I will never let you off. Finally, after letting out an extremely angry roar, Dragon Lord of Destruction tore open the dimensional space of the whirling dimension great cosmos. His nose was bleeding, and his face was bruised and swollen after being hit by the time and space divine clock. His figure instantly escaped into the dimensional space of the whirling dimension Great Cosmos, and he disappeared in a sorry state. He was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning, and he passed through several huge dimensional universes. Soon, his figure disappeared without a trace. He ran away. When they saw this scene, many high-level sovereigns who had been watching this scene from afar were dumbfounded. A 7 Tribulation sovereign had actually fled in panic. Qin Feng stood where he was, dragging the golden divine clock. Vast golden holy light flowed around his body, illuminating the Ganges world. Under this holy light, even the darkest corners of the Ganges world seemed to quietly dissipate. Qin Feng sneered as he looked in the direction where Dragon Lord of Destruction's voice had come from. So what if he was a 7th Tribulation sovereign? He had comprehended a trace of the flawless truth. Even a 7th Tribulation sovereign would find it difficult to injure him. Only 8th Tribulation sovereigns or 7th Tribulation sovereigns with Tao artifacts could cause him to be wary. It's a pity that I have only comprehended the flawless truth for a short period of time. I can't really convert 100% of my realm into combat power. Otherwise, it wouldn't be difficult for me to kill Dragon Lord of Destruction. Qin Feng felt a little helpless. 7 Tribulation sovereigns were far stronger than 6 Tribulation sovereigns. With his current realm, defeating them was not difficult. However, killing them was not an easy task. 7 Tribulation sovereigns could easily tear dimensional universes apart. This ability was too powerful. However, as time passed, his comprehension of the flawless truth would completely transform into combat power. He might even be able to create a mystic art that could suppress this ability to tear dimensions. Qin Feng looked outside, the whirling dimension, Great Cosmos. In his eyes, there was a mysterious fluctuation of chaotic time that could not be hidden from his extremely sensitive soul realm. The Pangus Saint Emperor's figure appeared in his vision. While he was beating up the Lord of Destruction, Qin Feng had left some of his divine consciousness outside. Outside the whirling dimension Great Cosmos, he sensed several hostile auras. Several forces had locked onto the Ganges world, and he felt as if there were daggers at his back. There were even a few people who were eager to fight. He was already prepared for a fierce battle. However, he did not expect a powerful force to descend and block all the spies for him. As if sensing Qin Feng's gaze, the Pangus Saint Emperor looked over. The Pangus Saint Emperor saw Qin Feng's gaze and nodded slightly. Immediately after, a space-time dimensional gate appeared. The Pangus Saint Emperor stepped into it and disappeared. Looking at this scene, Qin Feng's expression sank as he pondered in his heart. It seems like I owe him more and more favors. A trace of helplessness flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. This time, if not for the Pangus Saint Emperor and the arrival of so many 7th Tribulation sovereigns, the outcome would have been reversed. The one who would be beaten up would not be the Lord of Destruction, but Qin Feng. Even if he did not die, it would be terrible. Forget it. Anyway, 1 favor is owed, and 2 favors are also owed. Qin Feng shook his head inwardly. He already had so many debts that he did not have to worry about them. Immediately after, he looked at the glorious 8 directions Great Cosmos. The helplessness in his eyes instantly turned into an ominous glint. After driving away the troublemakers from the Dragon God Alliance, it was time to deal with the remaining 7 directions Great Cosmos Masters. Chapter 1963. Qin Feng's first plan was to convince the Southwest World Master. The second plan was formulated by Qin Feng based on the current situation of the Ganges world and the power of the Void Mother Stream. It was highly feasible. In fact, Qin Feng had never thought of directly going up to the other 6 World Masters. Qin Feng knew very well how many enemies he had. If he went up to them directly, it was very likely that all of them would jump out and surround him. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a sharp light, but it was different now. He had defeated the all-dimensional Dragon God Alliance head-on. In the northeast world, a vast divine mountain was emitting a boundless yellow light. With a flash, Qin Feng appeared in front of the divine mountain. A beam of divine light appeared above the divine mountain and turned into a mighty ruler. He was tall and burly, and his body shone with a heavy, earthy yellow light. Behind his head, 6 earthy yellow halos vibrated, and one could vaguely see countless hills and peaks, forming a boundless mountain range. Taiyu Saint Emperor, the 6th tribulation ruler of the yellow membrane dimension Great Universe. The yellow membrane dimension Great Universe was rumored to be similar to the dark dimension Great Universe. It was a huge dimension Great Universe dominated by a single path. In the dimension Great Universe, the Earth was the ruler and countless powerful beings who cultivated the Tao were born. Taiyu Saint Emperor was not only the Tao ancestor of the yellow membrane dimension Great Universe, but also one of the high-level rulers of the all-dimensional Desert Alliance. The information he had obtained from the Purple Firmament Immortal Palace flashed through Qin Feng's mind. Among the many alliances of high-level rulers in the various dimensions, the all-dimensional Desert Alliance was an alliance of interests formed by high-level rulers of the Tao. Its territory covered more than a dozen huge dimension Great Universes. The all-dimensional Desert Alliance might not be comparable to the all-dimensional Dragon God Alliance, but it also had 3 7th tribulation rulers. Qin Feng fixed his gaze on the expressionless Taiyu Saint Emperor and said indifferently, "I have 2 choices. I'll give you 2 choices. The first is to leave the Northeast world and the Ganges world. The second choice is for me to suppress or kill you and take the Northeast world from your hands." On the Divine Mountain, Taiyu Saint Emperor's face was a little green. This little brat was too infuriating. To think that they would try to rob him as soon as they arrived. Where did they place him, the Taiyu Sage Emperor? His fingers turned white. The Taiyu Sage Emperor wanted to attack, but he resisted the urge. He watched as the Dragon God Alliance's Dragon Lord of Destruction was pinned to the ground and beaten up. The Dragon Lord of 7 Tribulations, who used to be high and mighty, even had a nosebleed. He knew very well that he was no match for this terrifying lightning ancestor. Taiyu Saint Emperor raised his head and said coldly, his expression shifting again and again, "Your Excellency, it's always better to have one more friend than one more enemy. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Besides, with your Excellency's current realm, even if you take over the Northeast world, I'm afraid it won't be of much use." Qin Feng was expressionless. Of course, Qin Feng didn't want to make enemies everywhere. Why should he worry about making enemies if he lost his life? All right, it seems like you're still unsatisfied. I'll show you how far apart we are. Qin Feng stretched out a hand, and in an instant, golden light appeared on his palm. The scene of the Dragon Lord of Destruction pressing his face against the huge golden ancient bell appeared in the Taiyu Sage Emperor's mind. His expression changed drastically. "Wait, lightning ancestor, I'm willing to give up the Northeast world." The gushing golden light condensed on his palm. The golden bell was vast and mighty, and vaguely, a large area of the void seemed to be completely stagnant under the fluctuations of the golden light. The Taiyu Sage Emperor's expression darkened. The terrifying golden bell gave him a great sense of oppression. He forced a smile on his face. "Your Excellency, please give me a few years to withdraw some of my subordinates." He had operated the Northeast world for hundreds of thousands of years and cultivated a large number of experts. If all of them were to be scrapped, this trip to the Ganges world would be too miserable. Qin Feng waved his hand, his expression cold. "I only need the origin of the Northeast world. Whether you take your subordinates away or not has nothing to do with me." Ignoring the Taiyu Sage Emperor's expression, Qin Feng directly entered the depths of the Taiyu Sage Emperor's lair. A golden gourd appeared in his hand, turned into a terrifying golden light, and entered the depths of the Northeast world. It began to violently devour the origin of the Northeast world and the world. The Taiyu Sage Emperor watched this scene silently. The remaining anger in his heart had completely dissipated, leaving only helplessness and unwillingness. After a while, the Taiyu Sage Emperor turned and returned to the Northeast world. Not long after, he gathered his subordinates, confidants, and descendants and left the Ganges world, returning to the yellow membrane dimension, Great Cosmos. In the depths of the northeast world, the golden gourd around him transformed into a golden dragon and began to viciously devour the origin of the countless heavens and divine domains around it. Qin Feng looked coldly at the Taiyu Sage Emperor and the others as they left. He saw the Taiyu Sage Emperor's unwillingness, helplessness, and resentment, but his attention was on the other 5 worlds of the Ganges world. Whether we succeed or not depends on this. I hope these guys know what's good for them and don't make me use force, as he thought to himself. He fully unleashed the power of 6 Tribulation Sovereign. His body turned into a ray of light, and at the same time, he summoned the gods of the Spirit Sea world to help him devour the origin of the Northeast world. Not long after, the Northeast world was filled with murderous aura, and the rate at which worlds were being born began to slow down. The surrounding worlds began to lose their vitality and slowly degenerate into resource-depleted deserts. Dead yellow sand began to appear in the surrounding worlds. It's happening again. That person is really crazy. Doesn't he know how many enemies he'll make by doing this? In the remaining 5 corners of the 8 corners of the world, the high-level sovereigns looked at Qin Feng with helplessness, anger, and complicated emotions. The Taiyu Sage Emperor's departure was not a secret, and many high-level sovereigns had heard about it. This won't do. The lightning ancestor has already brought disaster to the southern world. After bringing disaster to the northeast world, I'm afraid he won't let the remaining 6 worlds go. Many high-level sovereigns had a change of heart. Many high-level sovereigns had originally planned to wait for the Ganges world to mature and wait until the Chaos era's Great Tribulation was at its peak, then harvest. Now, they had no choice but to harvest. If they didn't act now, the lightning ancestor would devour the northeast world completely. If he devoured a few more worlds, they wouldn't even have any leftovers to drink. As for joining forces to make trouble for the lightning ancestor, many ancient sovereigns extinguished this idea as soon as it arose. What a joke! This was a matter of life and death. Even if they defeated the lightning ancestor, most of the high-level sovereigns would probably die. To become a high-level sovereign, no high-level sovereign would be willing to sacrifice themselves for others, throwing their lives away and becoming a stepping stone for others. Chaos gradually appeared in the Ganges world. Apart from the Southwest World Master Luya, the other 5 World Masters could no longer sit still. Chapter 1964. The Northern World, the Eternal River Realm, had 8 worlds. In terms of prosperity, the most prosperous was the Southeastern world controlled by the creation god race's Patriarch, the creation god Sage Emperor. But in terms of chaos, the most chaotic world was the Northern world controlled by the chaos evil god race's sovereign, the Lord of Myriad Evil. A massive black lotus appeared in the sky above the Northern world, taking root in the void. It seemed to be the home of countless evil gods. Many heaven domains and god domains surrounded the gigantic black lotus. They were densely packed and arranged in rows according to the level of their strength. The black lotus was growing stronger day by day. However, as the northeast world began to shrink, the black lotus suddenly transformed. Countless pitch-black roots shot out of the depths of the void, stabbing into the heavens and god realms under its command. At the same time, countless black dots flew out of the black lotus, cackling as they greedily and savagely lunged at the heaven domains and god domains. These were evil gods. Countless powerful experts of the chaos evil god race were rushing out in full force to seize the origin energy of the northern world. At this moment, the high-level gods of the Eternal River Realm sensed the upheaval in the northern world. For a moment, the high-level gods felt a chill in their hearts. Chaos. Chaos. It was a complete mess. Many of the powerful beings had pale expressions. The Eternal River Realm, this ship that could withstand the great calamity of the primal chaos epic, was about to capsize. In the glorious sacred realm of the southeastern world, the creation god Sage Emperor and ancient god Origin first exchanged a silent glance. Since Xie has already made his move, let's make our move as well. Before the lightning ancestor digests the northeastern world, let's seize some origin energy and immediately leave. The creation god Sage Emperor's eyes flashed. In his heart, he did not feel any regret over this development. The movements of the whirling perfect world were very frequent. In all fairness, the creation god Sage Emperor was under immense pressure, and he was growing more anxious by the day. Nothing could be better than to seize some origin energy and leave. He looked at his good friend. Ancient god Origin first was expressionless, but the flames of anger and unwillingness in his eyes betrayed the turmoil in his heart. After a long silence, all that was left was a single cold sentence. Once this god's cultivation is complete, I will give you an explanation. Clenching his teeth, ancient god Origin first vanished from the spot. Seeing this, a hint of a smile appeared on the Holy Emperor's face. Ancient god Yuani had compromised. Soon, the southeastern world and the western world were thrown into chaos. Many high-level sovereigns could clearly sense that the eternal river realm was wailing. Not only these three worlds, but the rest of the northwest world and the eastern world also began to fall into chaos. Only the southwest world remained unchanged. In the southwest world, deep within the majestic flame god mountain, the two high-level sovereigns, Lu Ye and the Ancient One, looked at the unrest outside the southwest world. They exchanged a glance and sighed inwardly. The Ganges world is finished. Fear drives one mad. The Ancient One sighed. In fact, although Qin Feng was powerful at this time, if the remaining 7 worlds, in addition to the strength behind them, could attack, no matter how powerful Qin Feng was, he could only look at the ocean and sigh. However, the problem was that the hegemon of myriad fiends had led the way. However, the Ancient One had nothing to say about hegemon Alfien's decision. The hegemon of Alfiens was a god of destruction, and his original goal was to destroy the northern world and the eternal river plain. A world with great potential is being destroyed just like that. The Ancient One had a look of regret. In his opinion, if everything had gone smoothly, even if the eternal river plain couldn't become a perfect, immortal world, it could still become one of the strongest worlds below it. The value of such a world wasn't inferior to that of some large-scale dimensional great cosmoses. In the depths of the northeast world, countless baleful auras, tribulation auras, and death auras permeated the outer regions of the darkening world. They were like sickly spots that covered countless heavens and divine realms. Some powerful life forms sensed the changes. Through sacrifices, they communicated with a trace of the lightning ancestors' will and entered the spirit sea to receive protection. Others chose the path of resistance, trying to overcome the exhaustion of the source and cater to the northeast world's self-born savior. However, none of them failed, and they were all killed by lightning. The northeast world couldn't escape Qin Feng's grasp. The golden gourd transformed into a huge golden dragon that lay on top of the world. Abundant amounts of the world's origin were sucked out, and many worlds turned into light and fell into the golden dragon's huge mouth. Qin Feng's gaze landed on the other 7 worlds. Through his divine eyes, he could see the actions of the high-level sovereigns and the other 6 world overlords across billions of miles of space-time. The plan succeeded. Qin Feng's expression was indifferent, but the light in his eyes couldn't be concealed. His divine will entered the depths of the northeast world and seemed to merge with it. In the depths of the void of the northeast world, Qin Feng felt a change that he had never experienced before. The structure of space-time stopped thickening and became more complex. The black water of the void mother stream seemed to be affected by the eternal river plain's origin being plundered, and its flow slowed down. The huge force that blocked the surface world and the inner world seemed to be affected by both sides as the surface world's origin was plundered and it slowly weakened. In less than 10,000 years, this force will be reduced to the point where I can enter. Qin Feng's divine will probed countless times and quickly came to a conclusion. The power of the void mother stream was shrinking. The power of the Void Mother Stream was really blocking the source of the power of the surface world and the inner world. The Eternal River Plane was constantly absorbing the power of the Void Mother Stream to heal itself. It wouldn't be long before a flaw was revealed. I hope that the secrets hidden in the nine-colored island will allow me to break through at least the seventh tribulation and escape from the huge fire pit that is the whirling dimension universe. Qin Feng's heart was filled with hope, but a trace of anxiety flashed in his eyes. The more time passed, the more anxious he became. Once true sage Whirling Suo came out of seclusion, his good days would come to an end. But in an instant, a clear light rose in Qin Feng's heart. He cut off all distracting thoughts, and his mind regained its tranquility. His divine will once again sank into the comprehension of the countless changes in the laws of the Eternal River Plane. The Eternal River Plane was indeed of great value. The laws of heaven and earth that were nurtured in it might be inferior to the dimensional universe in terms of level. Many of the mysterious changes and evolutions of the laws in it were of great value. For sixth and seventh tribulation sovereigns, this was also a considerable amount of resources. Chapter 1965. The decline of the Northeast world was faster than many high-level sovereigns had imagined. The Southern world had been in decline for almost 6,000 years, while the Northeast world had only been in decline for about 3,000 years. This change shocked all the high-level sovereigns who had been secretly observing the Northeast world. Evidently, the lightning ancestor's strength had increased greatly in the time he had spent devouring the Southern world. After devouring the Northeast world, Qin Feng chased away the Northwest World Master, True Master Lycan, under the gaze of many. True Master Lycan came from another huge power that spanned more than 10-dimensional universes. He was also a disciple of True Sage Ru-Yi. True Sage Ru-Yi was also one of the ancient True Sages. True Sage Ru-Yi's power was not in this region of the dimensional sea, but in another small dimensional sea. Perhaps all the true sages had a tacit understanding with their disciples, but this disciple of True Sage Ru-Yi was in the same situation as Qin Feng, the disciple of Purple Cloud's True Sage. After completing his apprenticeship, he was chased away to wander the various dimensional universes in search of opportunities. True Master Lycan was not as strong as Qin Feng, but he was much more decisive than the Profound Sage Emperor and the Taiyu Sage Emperor. He left the Northwest world and the Ganges world, heading to the depths of the whirling sea to find a new world. The fall of the Northwest world once again intensified the conflict in the Eternal River world. Numerous high-level sovereigns began to fight over the last of the resources, and wars broke out one after another. Some high-level sovereigns died or were seriously injured and left the Ganges world. There were also high-level sovereigns who obtained many resources and became stronger. In the remaining 5 worlds, undercurrents were surging, and the waves inside were like the peak of a mountain. After 2,000 years of Qin Feng occupying the Northwest world, the Northwest world had completely withered. In the depths of the Northeast world, Qin Feng opened his eyes. In the distant depths of space, a golden light flew over, bringing with it a magnificent force that suppressed the laws of heaven and earth. It was a huge golden dragon. The golden dragon landed on his palm and transformed into a spiritual golden gourd. However, the golden gourd transformed in the next moment into a golden ring. The ring vibrated and transformed into a world. However, in the next moment, it transformed again into a golden gourd. The golden gourd was refined from the myriad forms world gourd treasure scroll. With the world of the spirit sea as its main body, it cultivated with Qin Feng's mind. During this period of time, it had been tempered by the eternal truth sacred fire, and it had gradually become compatible with the flawless truth. It had gradually walked out of the rut of the myriad forms world gourd treasure scroll created by the high-level sovereign. In fact, the original form of the golden gourd was not very suitable for Qin Feng's flawless truth. On the contrary, the ring-shaped flawless golden circle was the most suitable for Qin Feng's flawless truth. However, With Qin Feng's current accumulation, he was still unable to completely change the original form of the spirit sea world. His understanding of the laws of the heavens and earth had been transformed into resources that strengthened, enriched, and perfected a trace of eternal truth. Qin Feng's eyes flickered as he looked at the golden gourd that was not jumping, but turning into a flawless golden ring. Perhaps only after having the accumulation of 7 tribulations would the original form of this natal world be able to completely change into a flawless golden ring. The golden light entered his body, and the golden gourd disappeared from his palm. Qin Feng looked at the northwest world. At this time, the northwest world had completely turned into a desert. The worlds seemed to have lost their lives, and most of them had turned into floating desert worlds. Only a small number of them were nourished by the black water of the void mother stream, and were on the verge of death. Outside the northwest world, apart from the southwest world, the remaining world's life force was greatly reduced, and their origins were retreating. Although they did not turn into deserts like the south, northeast, and northwest worlds, they were also in the twilight of their lives. The growth of the worlds had completely stopped, and they were beginning to regress. His consciousness seeped into the depths of the northwest world. Layers of space-time became loose, and the structure was fluffy like a dying tree. Many places in the black water of the void mother stream had broken off and dried up. The time has come. Qin Feng was secretly shocked. He did not hesitate any longer, and his figure entered the depths of space-time in a flash. At a place where the riverbed of the void mother stream had dried up, a golden light trembled, and a large hole was drilled out. His figure flashed, and he went straight in. Qin Feng was at the intersection of the Ganges world's exterior, interior, and interior. Qin Feng's figure shuttled back and forth, and rays of space-time, light, flashed past him. Qin Feng's speed was extremely fast. Apart from the layers of void mother stream's water that seeped into this place, he soon appeared at the periphery of the inner world. Qin Feng's body trembled. When he glanced over, a shocking scene appeared before his eyes. The inner world was incomparably glorious. As far as the eye could see, there seemed to be endless nebulas, and there was an extremely rich smell of origins. It was boundlessly vast. Even as a 6th tribulation sovereign, Qin Feng still felt insignificant in front of this world. There was endless starlight above his head, and below his feet there seemed to be many majestic continents that were nurtured from the origins, connected together. The rich origins turned into clouds and mist that lingered above these continents. Below the continents, there was a black substance that turned into pure seawater, and the undercurrent was turbulent. The water of the void mother stream, there was so much black water of the void mother stream. Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. After comprehending a trace of the eternal truth and accumulating 6 tribulations in the high-level dominator realm, there were very few things that Qin Feng was afraid of. However, he instinctively felt a huge threat from the void mother stream's water. Qin Feng's gaze swept across the depths of the inner world, and his eyes narrowed as he felt the rich and strange laws of heaven and earth above the void of the inner world. A trace of difference appeared in his eyes, and it instantly turned into shock and even shock. The world here is evolving. I originally thought that the inner world nurtured by the Ganges world was similar to the netherworld nurtured by my spirit sea world, and that it would eventually evolve into a place of reincarnation and become yin and yang with the human world. Now, it seems that I was wrong. It doesn't seem to be the case. The surface world is just a packaging box, and there's something else inside. Once it's successfully nurtured, it will devour the surface world outside, break out of its shell, and become a huge new world. The Ganges world indeed has a high chance of evolving into a perfect, immortal world. Qin Feng was silent as he looked at the black water of the void mother stream that was like an abyssal sea. It's a pity that I interrupted its nurturing process and destroyed its shell before it took shape. It's like breaking an egg shell when it first hatches. At this moment, even though Qin Feng had already made up his mind, he still felt a huge sense of regret. What waste! However, this regret disappeared in the blink of an eye. Anyway, even if the Ganges world evolves into a perfect immortal world, it's still in the bag of that true divine. Anyway, it's not my thing that's destroyed, so I don't feel any heartache. Chapter 1966. Above the void, Qin Feng closed his eyes and quietly sensed the location of Mountain C1. At the same time, Qin Feng discovered that after entering the inner world, he was able to contact Taoist priest Kongkong's doppelganger in Mountain C1. However, this connection was intermittent. Perhaps it was because the inner world was enveloped by the Void Mother stream, or perhaps it was for some other unknown reason. However, he had a rough idea of where it was. With a flash, Qin Feng disappeared from where he was. The inner world was vaster than Qin Feng had imagined, and the number of experts it nurtured shocked Qin Feng. In the whirling dimension Great Cosmos, there were not many eternal divine ancestors born in each chaos era. It was already considered good to have 10 of them. Moreover, at least 9 out of 10 of them might have the bloodline of high-level sovereigns or be reincarnated high-level sovereigns. Only a small number of them were born from numerous low-level experts. Although so many high-level sovereigns had suddenly appeared in the whirling dimension Great Cosmos in this era, most of them were experts from other dimensional Great Cosmoses. Among the small number of them, there were many high-level experts from the whirling dimension Great Cosmos that had accumulated over dozens of chaos eras before this one. However, the changes in the inner world were somewhat beyond Qin Feng's imagination. Along the way, there were hundreds of experts at the level of eternal divine ancestors. There were even existences emitting the aura of sovereigns hidden in the depths of the void. According to Qin Feng's own perception, although some of these powerful existences belonged to the outside world, a large number of them were born from the inner world itself. Such a large number of high-level sovereigns was shocking. This confirmed some of Qin Feng's guesses and supported some of Qin Feng's thoughts. The essence of the Ganges world was indeed very high level. Once it was nurtured, its value would definitely be at the top of the world below the perfect immortal world. Ordinary worlds, even with the blessing of chaos eras, would not be able to expand so much in 1,000,000 years and nurture eternal divine ancestors, who were equivalent to dimensional demon gods. Qin Feng flew through the void. Although he did not release the huge pressure of a sixth tribulation sovereign, his speed was extremely fast. Ordinary high-level sovereigns could not catch him as he flew through space. He had saved a lot of trouble along the way. After more than 10 years of flying, when his figure appeared outside the Mountain C1 colony, the connection between him and Taoist Hong Kong became clearer and clearer. However, looking at the massive continent in front of him, Qin Feng felt somewhat dazed. As far as the eye could see, there was an enormous continent that seemed to have existed in the river of space-time since ancient times. It was boundless, without beginning or end. A majestic and heavy aura assaulted Qin Feng's mind. It was too big. Qin Feng had seen countless continents, but none of them could give him such a heavy pressure. It was as if he had encountered some kind of colossus that could not be spied upon. The Mountain C1 and Mountain C2 colonies, as well as the enormous cloud continents in his mind, had all disappeared, as if they had been completely connected. It must be the result of the evolution of essence power. The various settlements in the mountains and seas have broken through the surrounding barriers and are now connected to each other. It's almost as if the countless worlds of the God domain have joined together to form the mountain and sea world. An inconceivable miracle, Qin Feng exclaimed inwardly. His gaze fell on the continent. After muttering to himself for a moment, his figure flickered, and he silently disappeared into it, as if space-time had flowed. When Qin Feng landed on the continent, he felt as if the heavens and earth were far away, and space-time was heavy. It was as if he had been enveloped by something invisible, and he could not easily leave this continent. However, this kind of power was still slightly inferior to the eternal truth that Qin Feng had comprehended. As long as Qin Feng was willing, he would eventually be able to break through. Sensing this information, Qin Feng felt slightly more at ease. He looked down at the white clouds beneath his feet. As far as the eye could see, many cities had appeared. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. Since the time he had left the Mountain Sea colony, their civilization had advanced by a large margin, and they had already broken away from the lowest level of tribal society. They had formed cities, and countless aristocratic families and wealthy families had appeared. In addition, hundreds of millions of ordinary people lived in countless towns and villages. However, there was no lack of traces of transcendent power. The power of surnames had not disappeared because of the disappearance of the tribes. Instead, after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, the system had matured and settled into one soul, becoming an indelible mark on the land. The places where the clans and tribes had once lived seemed to have formed enormous holy lands, sects, and dynasties. At a glance, there were countless experts. True gods walked everywhere, and god emperors were as common as dogs. Only the sovereigns could shake them. Above them, there were many paramount gods who led the tribes and maintained order. Above them were the eternal emperors, who ruled over even more vast areas. The eternal sacred ancestors were lofty, and high-level sovereigns ruled over countless planes of space-time. What a glorious land of civilization! It reminds me of the legendary immortal world and the source world above the god world. This is the home of the sovereigns. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a strange light. Some perfect eternal worlds existed in many high-level worlds, such as the immortal world, the god world, and the sacred world. Most of them called it the land of origin, the land of immortality, the land of legends, or the home of the gods. It could be said to be in existence above the pyramid of worlds. Usually, such worlds had a natural attraction to beings above the level of sovereigns and would automatically guide experts above the level of sovereigns to enter. The Ganges world had the potential to become a perfect eternal world, and the inner world was already showing signs of such evolution. Soon, a huge ancient capital appeared in front of him. This huge city was called Divine Power City, and it was a divine city under the command of Sangkong Divine Kingdom in the Mountain Sea realm. Sangkong Divine Kingdom was the territory of Emperor Sangkong. Monarch Sangkong was one of the 13 monarchs in this region. He was also the actual overlord of this vast region that spanned billions of kilometers. Divine Power City was the territory of one of his disciples, the Divine Power Desolate God. A second step over God was a well-deserved, peerless expert in the vicinity of Divine Power City. Qin Feng's figure appeared outside the city. He was frowning as a dangerous look flashed in his eyes. According to the connection between him and Taoist priest Kong Kong of the three corpse clones, Taoist priest Kong Kong was in this city called Divine Power City. I'm afraid there's something strange about this. Before I left, I instructed Taoist priest Kong Kong to guard Sky Pillar Mountain in the Mountain Sea No. 1 colony. Now that Taoist priest Kong Kong has come to this remote Divine Power City instead of Sky Pillar Mountain, I'm afraid something has happened to him. Qin Feng's figure entered the Divine Might City. Not long after, Qin Feng's figure appeared within the Divine Might City, within a shop that sold artifacts. Treasure House. A strong pressure was faintly discernible from the golden signboard, indicating the foundation of this shop. In front of the counter, Qin Feng's face was gloomy as he looked at the tattered silver ancient book on the shelf. His face was so gloomy that water could drip from it. Chapter 1967. That ancient silver book was none other than Taoist Kong Kong's true body, the innate spirit treasure universe. Something really happened to Taoist Kong Kong. Narrowing his eyes, Qin Feng's eyes flickered with a gloomy light. A treasure trove apprentice saw Qin Feng's expression and was about to walk over when a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. Not only the female apprentice, but all the experts in the treasure trove house were shocked to find that they couldn't move at all. Only their thoughts could barely move. For a moment, the entire treasure trove house was dead silent. Under the terrifying gazes of the shopkeeper and the experts overseeing the treasure trove house, The ancient silver book on the counter suddenly turned into a ray of silver light and fell into the palm of the black-clothed young man in front of the counter. That ancient silver book, which had always been regarded as trash by the treasure trove house, emitted a faint silver light and floated above the black-clothed young man's palm. Soon, many experts could see that the black-clothed young man's sword-like eyebrows were raised, and a terrifying chill made many experts wet their pants on the spot. The ancient silver book instantly turned into a ray of light and entered Qin Feng's body through the palm of his hand. Soon, everything that happened in the past 100,000 years, including the cause and effect of Daoist Kongkong's death, was grasped by Qin Feng. Qin Feng's face was expressionless. As it turned out, a mere 30,000 years after he left the Mountain Sea 1 colony, the colony underwent a huge change. The inner world was sealed, and the clouds of the Mountain Sea realm were pushed by a strange force and merged to form a huge continent. This was the current Mountain Sea continent. The clouds were opened, and the territories of all the tribes were connected as one. A huge conflict broke out. In the first 10,000 years, Daoist Kong Kong relied on the divine ability he obtained from his true body and was barely able to defend the Mountain Sea 1 colony. However, 12,000 years later, a third tribulation sovereign descended. Daoist Kong Kong was severely injured. After sending Zio away, the green-clothed girl, Luo Chong, and the gray-clothed girl, Chunyu Xianxian, left and died. His true body wandered about, and because it was broken, no one cared about it. In the end, it appeared in a remote city like Divine Might City. Ancestor of Disaster. He murmured. This was the title of that third tribulation sovereign. Qin Feng's eyes flashed a cold smile. In the next moment, his figure silently disappeared from the treasure trove house, as if he had been blown away by the wind. The instant Qin Feng's figure disappeared, everyone in the treasure house suddenly realized that they could move again. However, at this moment, everyone's faces were filled with shock, fear, and palpitations as they looked at the place where the silver ancient book disappeared. This experience was too frightening. The Calamity God Mountain was the original Sky Pillar Mountain. Ever since the guardian of this land, the Thunder Emperor's sacred ancestor, was defeated tens of thousands of years ago, this place had become the Calamity Ancestor's residence in this area. Emperor Yin of the Jiang clan, Emperor Huang of the Ji clan, Emperor Yu of the Qi clan, Emperor Yu of the Qi clan, Black Emperor of the Ying clan, War God of the Qi clan, Ancestor God of the Rong clan, Emperor Yu of the Yu clan, Ancestor God of the Gaoxing clan, Ancestor God of the Hunting clan, Ancestor God of the Si clan, Ancestor God of the Cheongsang clan. All the clans in the Mountain Sea number 1 gathering place became new clans under the Ancestor of Disaster. After hundreds of thousands of years of development, as the various clans disbanded and became holy lands, the Ancestor of Disaster's territory did not suffer any impact. Instead, as his strength increased, his territory expanded. The surrounding 4 or 5 gathering places fell into the Ancestor of Disaster's hands. A fifth tribulation sovereign. Even in the Mountain Sea realm, which had undergone drastic changes, he was still a huge stabilizing force. As his prestige spread, this place became a taboo place in the hearts of the surrounding holy lands. But today, the God Mountain Sea of Disaster attracted a rare phenomenon. In the sky above the God Mountain Sea of Disaster, a surge of space-time power surged like an ocean, like a sharp sword. It was as if a barbaric existence directly tore through space and time in the distance. A black-clothed figure silently appeared in the sky above the God Mountain Sea of Disaster. Who is it? How dare you trespass on the God Mountain Sea of Disaster? Men, quickly surrender. Kneel down and await your punishment. This figure did not conceal the huge commotion of tearing space-time. In almost an instant, the countless powerful beings cultivating in the God Mountain Sea of Disaster discovered him. They flew out of their seclusion and charged at him with a murderous look on their faces. Bang, bang, bang. But in an instant, the figures that flew up were like firecrackers in the sky. In an instant, large areas exploded. The black-clothed figure swept across all the experts that charged at him with just a glance. Soon, a shocking divine light rushed out from the depths of the God-mountain sea of disaster, carrying an extremely grand and surging aura of destiny. It appeared at the peak of the mountain in an instant. It was a white-clothed man in plain clothes. He had a white beard and long white hair that was casually tied behind his head with a white wooden hairpin. His large sleeves fluttered in the wind as he looked at Qin Feng with an inexplicable light in his eyes. The ancestor of disaster. He was a fifth tribulation sovereign who ruled over 4 to 5 assembly areas. Although his temperament was calm, he had a terrifying presence. A strange light flickered in his eyes, as if he was indifferent to destiny. Everything was merely a chess piece in his eyes. High up in the sky, Qin Feng looked at the god of disaster indifferently with a cold expression. You're the god of disaster, right? You kill my clone. I'll give you 2 choices. First, kill yourself immediately, and I'll let your true spirit reincarnate. Second, I'll crush you to death with a slap and scatter your soul. Amidst the domineering voice, the entire God Mountain Sea of disaster was a little dazed. There was actually someone who dared to speak to the god of disaster like that. The god of disaster's soft and cold voice resounded in the sky. You're an outsider. How dare you behave so atrociously in my territory? You're courting death. You're the one courting death. Murderous intent flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. He raised a hand and slammed it down heavily on the God Mountain Sea of disaster. His palm rapidly enlarged and instantly turned into a giant palm that covered millions of miles. Under the palm, the god of disaster's expression changed. Under the terrifying force, he couldn't move at all. Even his divine consciousness was completely confined. Bang! The terrifying pillar of heaven's mountains was like fragile tofu. Everything that was hundreds of millions of feet tall was directly turned into fine powder. The ground within tens of millions of miles cracked, and countless living beings who cultivated in the God Mountain Sea of disaster were buried along with it. The god of disaster was pressed to the ground, and his true body exploded. An illusory stream of light tried to escape from the depths of the ground. Countless silver lights scattered and tried to converge in midair. That was the god of disaster's saint soul. A high-level sovereign's life force was tyrannical. To a certain extent, it was immortal and indestructible. When Qin Feng saw this, a sinister smile appeared in his eyes. An eternal golden lightning shot out from his palm. Like millions of golden snakes, it instantly trapped the countless silver circles. Finally, it transformed into a silver ball that appeared above his palm. I said I'll crush you to death, so I'll definitely crush you to death. His 5 fingers suddenly tightened, and there seemed to be an extremely terrifying scream erupting from his palm. Chapter 1968. Sizzle. That was the last sovereign true spirit. It was difficult to kill a sovereign true spirit in the dimensional universe. Only an eternal true sage would have the ability to kill it at its source. Qin Feng looked outside the inner world. The outer world was surrounded by the void mother stream. Now that it was in a dry period, it was not difficult for him to leave. However, it was difficult to tear open a passage to another dimensional universe from here. Even if he succeeded, it would probably lead to a huge change. Qin Feng did not want to create more problems in order to kill the sovereign true spirit. Qin Feng's eyes flickered as he looked at the sizzle of white light on his palm. Forget it. Let's seal this person first. Revenge is not urgent. That treasure is the most important. With a thought, Qin Feng spoke softly, and ancient Tao sounds flew out. It was like the sound of heaven and earth, the sound of destruction, and the sound of heaven and earth. It shook the universe. It vaguely contained the power to split heaven and earth apart and twist the universe. It turned into golden, ancient, tadpole-like words and entangled the sovereign true spirit like a golden silkworm spitting silk. Gradually, it turned into a golden cocoon. This was a sealing technique that followed Qin Feng's flawless truth. The countless golden tadpole-like words transformed into a cocoon that was constantly changing. It seemed to contain countless flaws, but every time the sovereign true spirit wanted to move, the countless golden tadpole-like words would change and eliminate the flaws, trapping the sovereign true spirit again. Even with Qin Feng's own eyes, this sealing technique was extremely terrifying. The power of the eternal truth was unbelievably strong. Unless it was someone who had also comprehended a trace of the eternal truth, there would be a chance to break this seal. This sealing technique was still in its infancy. However, Qin Feng believed that this secret technique would be of great use in the future. Golden light flickered, and the golden tadpole-like words were cast. The broken sword turned into a golden diamond-shaped piece of gold. Under the sunlight, it flickered with brilliant golden light. After casually putting away the sealing crystal, Qin Feng looked at the divine mountain of calamity, which used to be the pillar of heaven's mountains. The pillar of heaven's mountain, which was like a pillar that supported the heavens, had completely disappeared. It had broken down from the middle, and everything within 1,000,000 miles had been reduced to dust. The many countries in the surroundings had also been reduced to fragments by the palm strike. In the depths of the earth, terrifying cracks that were millions of feet wide appeared. Although he did not completely kill the ancestor of Yi, it could be considered as taking revenge for Taoist priest Kong Kong. Qin Feng closed his eyes as the eternal saint energy gathered in his palm. In an instant, it turned into 9 spiritual pearls of different colors. They shone brightly as they spun and danced above his palm. 9 spirits pearl. After summoning the 9-spirit pearl, Qin Feng instantly sensed the location of the 9-colored island in the depths of the Mountain Sea 1 colony. His figure flashed, and he disappeared into the ground in the blink of an eye. Moments after Qin Feng's figure disappeared, numerous powerful divine senses headed towards the direction of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains. After witnessing the scene of the ruins of the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains that had completely collapsed, the powerful divine senses trembled violently. They were the high-level imperial emperors under the ancestor of Yi's command. However, the scene before their eyes was too shocking. The ancestor of Yi had disappeared, and the divine mountain of Yi that symbolized his authority had turned into ruins. Had something happened to the ancestor of Yi? Many imperial emperors and desolation god kings who were looking over had different expressions. Many desolation god kings and high-level imperial emperors did not have much loyalty to begin with. They were just under the control of others. Now that the ancestor of Yi had disappeared, even his trusted subordinates had turned into dust. How could the group of powerhouses not have any other thoughts? In the depths of the mountain's sea's origin source, a 9-colored passageway suddenly appeared in the depths of the turbid Earth's origin source. A black-robed figure appeared from the 9-colored passageway. In an instant, the 9-colored passageway turned into a 9-colored ray of light that entered the black-robed figure's body. Qin Feng looked at the familiar Earth's origin source. The rich Earth's origin source was like a slurry. When he entered it, he felt like a bug that had fallen into the Earth's origin source. The heavy pressure made it difficult for him to breathe. At a glance, everything was turbid yellow. If it were an ordinary high-level imperial ruler, even if they found the location of the origin source, they would not be able to find traces of the 9-colored island in the boundless turbid yellow origin source. Even a powerhouse like Qin Feng, who had comprehended a trace of the eternal truth, could not do it. The boundless turbid yellow origin source contained a trace of very mysterious power. It was difficult for ordinary divine consciousness to see through the mystery and distinguish the 4 directions. 9 colors flickered on Qin Feng's palm. His gaze fell on the 9 spirit pearls that danced like small planets. In the turbid yellow origin source, the only thing that could be used as a guide was the 9 spirit pearls. The 9-colored ray of light clearly sensed the location of the 9-colored island in the turbid yellow origin source. Qin Feng waved his eternal saint energy to separate the turbid yellow origin source and moved forward quickly. The closer he got to the 9-colored island, the more the 9 spirit pearls trembled. Gradually, The nine-colored ray of light passed through the dense, turbid yellow origin source and gradually appeared in Qin Feng's sight. In the midst of the dense nine-colored ray of light that gathered on the nine-colored island, a figure suddenly appeared 1,000 miles away. 9 spirit pearls of different colors circled around the figure. The figure seemed to have merged perfectly with the nine-colored ray of light emitted by the nine-colored island. Someone beat him to it? Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. His gaze instantly fell on the 9 spirit pearls circling around the figure. As if sensing the aura of the 9 spirit pearls, the 9 spirit pearls in Qin Feng's hand began to stir. It seemed like they wanted to pounce on the other 9 spirit pearls and devour them completely. Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. According to what Qin Feng knew, the Mountain Sea No. 1 colony would give birth to 9 spirit pearls every once in a while. All 9 spirit pearls were exactly the same. As long as the previous set of 9 spirit pearls was refined by someone, the Mountain Sea No. 1 colony would immediately give birth to a new set of 9 spirit pearls. The person in front of him was probably the owner of the other set of 9 spirit pearls. He carefully sized up the person. The person's aura was quite powerful. He had faintly reached the second tribulation sovereign realm. Seeing this, Qin Feng inwardly let out a sigh of relief. The person who beat him to it seemed to be trapped outside the nine-colored island. However, the person's aura seemed to be somewhat mysterious. It seemed like he had entered a state of enlightenment and faintly resonated with the nine-colored island. This resonance was very mysterious. It seemed like he was about to be recognized by the nine-colored island. This change caused Qin Feng's expression to turn gloomy. He had come to the nine-colored island many times, but each time he was kicked out. However, this person seemed to have obtained a recognition of a nine-colored island and was about to become the owner of a nine-colored island. Qin Feng had a feeling in his heart. If he had come a few tens of thousands of years later, the nine-colored island would probably have a new owner. This discovery made Qin Feng feel a sense of relief and a trace of anger in his heart. However, this person seemed somewhat familiar. Qin Feng carefully sized up the person. A moment later, a trace of strangeness appeared on his face. It's actually him. Chapter 1969. This figure was none other than Ziya, who had been sent away by Priest Kong Kong before he perished. Qin Feng was silent. Compared to the past, Ziya's cultivation base had skyrocketed. Her cultivation base had jumped several levels from a mere second-step origami. In a short period of time, she had reached the realm of a high-level dominator. Moreover, she had reached the level of a high-level dominator with 2 calamities. Such a speed in hundreds of thousands of years was even faster than Qin Feng's cultivation speed. This speed was definitely among the best, even among the peerless geniuses of the dimensional great cosmos. Qin Feng sighed. In the memories of Luo Chong, the one who had obtained the 9 spirit pearl was not Qin Feng, but Ziya. Ziya was from the Mountain Sea realm and would be the main character for a period of time. Qin Feng had appeared out of nowhere. He had thought that he had taken away Ziya's fate and interrupted his growth. However, he had not expected Ziya to find this place. Although he did not obtain the first set of 9 spirit pearls, new 9 spirit pearls had fallen into his hands in the following years. Most importantly, the owner of a 9-colored island was destined to be Ziya. It's a pity. This matter concerns my future in life. I have no choice but to bully the weak. If I can escape this misfortune, there will be compensation in the future. He sighed softly. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The 9 spirit pearls around Z, you seem to have sensed the existence of the other 9 spirit pearls and started to buzz. Ziya's eyelids narrowed slightly, as if he was about to be awakened. Swoosh! Qin Feng appeared in front of Ziya and pointed his jade-like finger between Ziya's eyebrows. Countless golden tadpole-like words appeared on his palm. Ziya's expression calmed down instantly. Countless golden tadpole-like words covered his entire body and turned into a golden crystal that appeared on Qin Feng's palm. The 9 spirit pearls on the surface of his body seemed to have lost their owner and wanted to escape. However, they quickly froze in the void and appeared on Qin Feng's palm. Qin Feng kept the golden seal in his body and looked at the 9 spirit pearls on his palm. This was the second set of 9 spirit pearls. The 9 spiritual pearls trembled as if they had a mind of their own. They wanted to escape, but Qin Feng's eternal saint energy suppressed them. The bright golden eternal saint energy surged and slowly washed away the mark that belonged to Ziya in the 9 spirits pearl. After being stained with Qin Feng's eternal saint energy, it finally stopped vibrating. After refining this set of 9 spirit pearls, Qin Feng sensed that the 9-colored island in front of him had become even clearer. Without hesitation, Qin Feng turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the 9-colored island. Rumble. As he stepped forward, millions of rays of light shot into the sky from the 9-colored island, rushing toward Qin Feng like a vast ocean. It covered the sky and covered the earth. Ordinary 4 tribulation and 5 tribulation sovereigns would be blasted out of their origin space easily when faced with such a terrifying attack. Unlike the previous 2 times, this time, Qin Feng's strength was no longer the same as before. We have different lives. Are you rejecting me? However, since you won't give it to me obediently, I'll snatch it myself. His face darkened, and he made a hand seal. A golden light appeared in front of him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The vast bell sound shook millions of miles. Amidst the 9-colored rays of light, Qin Feng was like a boulder. Unlike the previous 2 times, he was blasted out easily. Step by step, he rushed toward the 9-colored island. Qin Feng's body flickered with unbelievable holy light. No matter how the 9-colored rays of light bombarded him, they couldn't stop him from advancing. In the end, within 100 miles of the 9-colored island, the surging 9-colored rays of light were like a terrifying cosmic tide set off by the dimensional great universe. With such destructive power, even an ordinary giant world would be reduced to dust and blown to the edge of an unknown dimension. The milky white rays of light were like a huge sun that enveloped Qin Feng. Under the flawless light of truth, the surging 9-colored rays of light couldn't penetrate. At this moment, Qin Feng's foundation as a 6 tribulation sovereign was unleashed to the extreme. Qin Feng closed his eyes. At this moment, Qin Feng's heart was in turmoil. When he was within 100 miles of the 9-colored island, Qin Feng discovered that there seemed to be an unknown change contained in the ocean-like 9-colored rays of light. He extended his divine consciousness and probed slightly. Instantly, countless laws and mysteries were captured by his divine consciousness. After a slight analysis, they turned into countless laws and mysteries for him to control. Qin Feng was very familiar with this mysterious feeling. It was similar to the origin calamity in the dimensional great universe. However, compared to the origin calamity, the things on the 9-colored island were gentler. In just a moment, Qin Feng felt that the trace of eternal truth in the depths of his soul seemed to have been enriched. What kind of place is this? Qin Feng found it hard to believe, but he was also pleasantly surprised. If I can comprehend here for a period of time, then the accumulation of the 7 tribulations, Qin Feng's eyes lit up. The closer he got, the more terrifying the power of the 9-colored rays of light became. After another 50 miles, Qin Feng felt that he had reached his limit. If he went any further, he would definitely be ejected from the 9-colored island. Qin Feng was no longer in a hurry. He sat cross-legged in the 9-colored rays of light. The divine clock of time and space above his head withstood the majestic pressure of the 9-colored rays of light. His divine consciousness probed the 9-colored rays of light and began to analyze the changes contained in the rays of light. As Qin Feng immersed himself in comprehending the laws and mysteries, unknowingly, countless laws and mysteries that he had comprehended over the years surged into his mind, colliding with these comprehensions and creating incredible sparks. The structure of the flawless truth in his mind began to fill up bit by bit, as though it was being inflated. Unknowingly, Qin Feng instinctively moved towards the 9-colored island every once in a while, driven by the laws and mysteries. 40 miles, 30 miles, 20 miles, his strength was changing and increasing. In 10,000 years, Qin Feng had unknowingly reached the edge of the nine-colored island. As he comprehended many laws and mysteries, the trace of the flawless truth in Qin Feng's mind had grown more than 10 times. Its growth caused an extremely clear halo to appear behind the head of the saint's soul. His entire being had turned into a sun that was many times brighter than the sun. The perfection of the flawless truth required one to comprehend the immeasurable changes of the laws and then comprehend the countless changes. Only then could the flawless truth be perfected step by step. The laws and mysteries emitted by the nine-colored island benefited Qin Feng immeasurably. At the instant Qin Feng entered the nine-colored island, the origin of the nine-colored island turned into a huge amount of information that gushed into his mind, allowing him to understand it. In the surface world of the Ganges world, the chaos of the octagonal world had come to an end. More than 10,000 years had passed. In the first few thousand years, the octagonal world lords had not discovered Qin Feng's disappearance. They were still anxiously plundering the world's origin. However, in the following few thousand years, the octagonal world lords had discovered Qin Feng's disappearance, and their mentality had undergone a subtle change. Chapter 1970. A portion of the world lords stopped extracting the world's origin from the dying world. Most of the world lords chose to leave after harvesting some of the world's origin. It was as easy as killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. The Ganges world indeed had the potential to do so. After thousands of years of extracting its origin, the Ganges world had been injured, but with the support of the Void Mother Stream, it could slowly recover. Not every high-level hegemon was as inclined toward destruction as hegemon Allfiend. Of course, there were still some high-level rulers who treated the Ganges world's origin as leaks and were prepared to harvest it multiple times. Thanks to this, the Ganges world slowly regained its vitality in 10,000 years. 10,000 years after Qin Feng entered the nine-colored island, the Ganges world's vitality had recovered to a certain extent. The number of living beings increased. Many high-level sovereigns finally calmed down when they saw that the lightning ancestor had disappeared for a full 20,000 years. They no longer had any thoughts of leaving after taking a batch. The Ganges world's prosperity reappeared. Even the world in the south, the world in the northwest, and the world in the northeast, which had been completely drained by Qin Feng, were like withered trees coming back to life, and the scene of doomsday in the desert was recovering. Vitality was hidden. As the saying went, ice couldn't stop flowing water, and withered trees could come back to life. The Void Mother Stream's power was filled with miracles. However, the Ganges world wasn't peaceful. In 20,000 years, many high-level rulers had fallen in unknown space-time, and many new high-level rulers had been born. At the same time, many high-level rulers from alternate dimensional universes had entered the scene. It was rumored that some high-level rulers who had left the Ganges world had already put up the Ganges world's phenomenon for sale to some famous factions in the multidimensional universes. This attracted the attention of many great powers. This was especially so in the last 5,000 years. After the races of the Whirling Sea had been wiped out by the Whirling Perfect World, many true sages of the Whirling Perfect World had their eyes on the Ganges world. There were many hidden undercurrents gathered here, and every undercurrent hid a huge power. The local powers of the whirling dimensional great cosmos, the powers of the alternate dimensional great cosmos, and even some true sages' sects all focused their attention on this place. Many top-level, high-level rulers had their eyes on the Ganges world. In the Purple Heaven Immortal Palace, at the highest level of the Huangting Dimension's immortal net, there was a huge purple sun. The majestic purple sun's light radiated into every level of the immortal net. It was located at the center of the immortal net and at the top level. There was a deep level of majesty and power that was difficult to look directly at. This was an ancient purple Taoist palace floating in the depths of chaos. When Qin Feng came into contact with the nine-colored island, a gray-robed Taoist who had been dozing off in the Taoist palace, suddenly felt his eyelids twitch, and he woke up. He opened his eyes, which were simple and unchanging. His gaze moved slightly, and there seemed to be countless threads in the void that connected to his body. The threads were invisible to the naked eye, but they were incomparably mysterious. Not in the past, not in the present, not in the future, and not in any space-time. If there was a top-level, high-level sovereign present, they would definitely be able to recognize that this was a karmic line. Ordinary existences did not dare to have karma with the eternal true sage. If there was, they had to repay it. Otherwise, sooner or later, it would become a huge disaster. In order to comprehend the changes of eternity, the eternal true sage would intentionally cut off the karmic lines on their bodies. Only those who had a close relationship with the eternal true sage would leave behind a karmic line. His gaze landed on a thin, milky white karmic line. At this moment, this karmic line was growing rapidly. Looking at this scene, a hint of surprise flashed in purple firmament true sage's eyes. He bent his fingers and made a deduction. Suddenly, a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. Forget it. Although this disciple has never been filial to me, he is still my disciple. I can't not help him. This old man really has a tiring life. What a sin. The wrinkles on purple firmament true sage's face wrinkled as he muttered to himself. A snow-white horsetail whisk appeared in purple firmament true sage's hand, and he gently swept it in the direction of the whirling dimension great cosmos. Noiselessly, a strange energy passed through the dimensional barrier and landed in the surroundings of the Ganges world, shielding it from the fate of all living things. The moment purple firmament true sage touched the fate of all living things, in the center of the whirling dimension great cosmos, a strange-looking monk opened his eyes in a huge, luxurious palace. A strange power swept across the whirling dimension great cosmos, and his gaze landed on the Ganges world. This strange monk was dressed strangely. His face was sallow, and his messy hair was tied into two buns at the back of his head. He had a benevolent look on his face, but he was wearing a flaxen yellow monk robe. Why did purple firmament true sage suddenly attack the Ganges world? Furthermore, he blocked the fate of all living things within. Is there something mysterious about this? True sage whirling Sua's expression changed. With a thought, she started to deduce everything about the Ganges world. However, in the next moment, her expression darkened, and she stopped. She could not deduce anything. All the changes in the Ganges world seemed to be covered by a fog. Even an eternal true sage would not be able to uncover it in a short period of time. Purple firmament true sage was one of the older true sages. Among the 300 true sages, his strength was one of the top few. True sage Whirling Sua had just become a true sage not long ago. She did not have the ability to break through this invisible seal. The true saint of purple clouds has always been a mysterious person. He is always elusive and elusive. However, his every move is not without a target. The last time, he created a diversion to help Pan Gu comprehend the eternal truth. This time, he must have his own intentions as well. True sage Whirling Sua had the urge to immediately come out of seclusion and find out what was going on. However, when her gaze landed on her body and she felt the changes in it, true sage Whirling Sua forcefully suppressed this urge. He was only a step away from forming the eternal sage body. He was now in the same situation as Whirling Sua's perfect immortal world. He could not leave. If he left, the ink painting of 2 chaos eras would be completely wasted. To become an eternal true sage, forming the eternal true soul, was the first step. Such an eternal true sage was usually called a new eternal true sage. In order to get rid of this label, one had to first form a perfect eternal sage body. True sage Whirling Sua was an existence who had achieved the Tao through the world flow. She had to do more. First, she had to form a perfect immortal world. Secondly, she had to use the power of the perfect immortal world to form an eternal true sage body. Although she could not leave Whirling Sua's perfect immortal world, true sage Whirling Sua immediately sent her disciples to the Ganges world to investigate. At this moment, true sage Whirling Sua was not the only one who was alarmed. The other eternal true sages who had been paying attention to the changes in the Ganges world all seemed to have sensed something. However, they could not break through the fog of destiny that purple firmament true sage had set up. For a moment, they all had guesses. Some even sent their disciples to the Ganges world to find out what was going on. Chapter 1971. A storm was brewing in the Ganges world, and the calamity was getting more and more intense. However, it didn't affect the inner world, let alone Qin Feng, who was on the nine-colored island in the depths of the inner world. Almost all the high-level rulers of the Ganges world would never have thought that there would be such a huge opportunity hidden in the depths of the Ganges world to give birth to a dimensional heart. The true origin of the nine-colored island that Qin Feng had come into contact with was the dimensional heart. The dimensional heart was a divine object nurtured by a dimensional great cosmos. It was one of the mysterious dimensional objects and was different from Tao artifacts. Its value was comparable to Tao artifacts, and in terms of assisting one's cultivation, it far surpassed some top Tao artifacts. The dimensional heart contained all the information after the creation of a dimension. It was also the condensation of the essence of a dimension. Dimensional hearts were usually extremely rare, and there might not even be one in 100-dimensional great cosmoses that could nurture a dimensional heart. Qin Feng's interception this time had indeed snatched a huge opportunity from Zia. If it was just an ordinary dimensional heart, it would be fine. Although it was comparable to a Tao artifact, for Qin Feng, who had experienced the origin calamity of the dimensional great cosmos, it was only an additional comprehension of the laws of the origin of the dimension. At most, it would help him complete the accumulation of the seventh tribulation of a high-level ruler. However, the greatest value of the dimensional heart in the whirling dimensional great cosmos was that it recorded the birth of a perfect immortal world. The whirling dimensional great cosmos had been refined by the true sage whirling dimensional great cosmos since its birth. It had undergone 9 perfect calamities before finally becoming a perfect immortal world. Countless mysterious information was engraved in the dimensional heart. To Qin Feng, who was also walking the path of a world, this was unimaginably shocking and beneficial. Of course, if another high-level ruler had come in, the value of this dimensional heart might not be as great as imagined. It might even become a highly toxic poison that could corrode one's Tao heart. The path of a true sage was unique. Personally witnessing the evolution of the whirling dimensional great cosmos to perfection might not be a good thing. It would be easy for one's Tao heart to be assimilated. Even if one became a true sage in the end, they might only be a fake true sage. These false true saints comprehended the eternal truth of another eternal true saint and were forever restricted by the other eternal true saints. However, in Qin Feng's hands, he would not be affected. He had already comprehended a bit of his own eternal truth. Although his quality was not as good as the eternal true sages, he already had a certain level of resistance. Instead, he could make use of the dimensional heart's countless laws of the dimensional multiverse to nourish himself. Sitting on the 9-colored island, countless 9-colored rays of light came from all directions and drilled into Qin Feng's eternal saint body through his pores. Qin Feng's state was very mysterious. His soul was in a state of enlightenment, and his body seemed to have merged with the huge 9-colored island. His body was sinking as if he was standing on quicksand, silently sinking into the quicksand. However, if there were people on the 9-colored island who were paying attention, they would be able to see that behind his head, gradually, after the 6th milky white halo, the 7th milky white halo gradually appeared. The 7 milky white halos vibrated, and the embryonic form of a world faintly appeared. This huge world changed and vibrated, turning into a swimming golden light. It was like a golden halo, and it was extremely mysterious. It was unknown how much time had passed. It seemed like tens of thousands of years, but it also seemed like hundreds of thousands of years. The nine-colored island actually started to shrink. The unparalleled nine-colored rays of light seemed to be sucked dry by Qin Feng, who was on the nine-colored island. When the nine-colored island shrank to half its original size, the back of Qin Feng's head suddenly shook, and the eighth milky white halo suddenly appeared. The accumulation of an eighth tribulation sovereign. This kind of breakthrough speed was really shocking. However, what was even more shocking was that within the eight milky white halos, the golden halo of the floating world became even brighter. It seemed like it was going to materialize from the void. An immortal and inextinguishable rich radiance was gradually born within the golden circle. It was as if a kind of perfect and flawless power was emerging and budding. As the eighth milky white halo appeared, the island condensed from nine-colored rays of light seemed to have suddenly disappeared. Only a black-robed youth was left in its original place. He was floating in the air with his eyes closed, and there were no aura fluctuations around him. The eight milky white halos behind his head were vibrating. In front of his chest, a strange object as huge as a basketball court appeared. It was a huge heart with 9 colors. It vibrated inside, inhaling and exhaling. As it inhaled and exhaled, it seemed to be able to move the multidimensional universe. Countless chaotic cosmic tides could be seen revolving, and they were under his control. The main body of the dimensional heart, the 9-colored island, was only a part of the 9-colored laws in the periphery. After Qin Feng completely absorbed it, its true body was finally revealed. At this time, 9-colored rays of light rained down from the huge and majestic dimensional heart. A huge beam of light formed from 9-colored rays of light directly pierced through the void and entered the black-robed youth's chest. At a rate visible to the naked eye, the black-clothed youth's chest shook violently, while a golden ring rotated. Every time it rotated, the majestic 9-colored light radiating from the dimensional core would weaken a little. Correspondingly, the golden ring grew increasingly dignified, seemingly even heavier, and brimming with mysterious laws and mysteries. As the dimensional heart shrank until it was only the size of an ordinary millstone, the 9th illusory milky white halo behind Qin Feng's head started to appear. An extremely mysterious power started to emerge from his body and gradually seeped into the origin space. It seemed like it would rush out of the origin space at any time and shake the endless dimensions. The foundation of a 9th tribulation sovereign. The moment the 9th milky white halo appeared, Qin Feng had already reached the peak of the sovereign realm. In the various dimensions and the numerous dimensional universes, there are definitely only a handful of people who could reach this step. Only one 9th tribulation sovereign out of hundreds of thousands of high-level sovereigns could be born. A high-level sovereign at this realm could be called an eternal sovereign. The next step was to perfect the eternal truth that one had comprehended. If one could reach the eternal truth realm, they could try to fuse their soul realm and make the final breakthrough. Once they broke through and condensed an indestructible, eternal, immortal soul, they would reach the eternal, true sage realm. This kind of breakthrough was not far away. In the depths of Qin Feng's soul, the flawless truth was absorbing the countless dimensional laws and mysteries transmitted by the dimensional heart. It was like a seed hidden deep underground that had absorbed countless nutrients and was gradually reaching perfection, and it was on the verge of germination. This incredible power was still hidden and accumulating. Once it reached perfection, Qin Feng might be able to directly break through the 9th tribulation and enter the sage realm. Just as Qin Feng's accumulation entered the 9th tribulation sovereign realm, the tribulation in the periphery of the Ganges river world had also reached a peak. It had been close to 1,000,000 years. The Ganges river world was so huge that even the terrifying true sages in the various dimensional universes were astonished. Chapter 1972. After a million years of expansion, when Shin Feng was in seclusion for the first 100,000 years, the Ganges world had already recovered its origin. After 100,000 years, it started to expand again. Every 10,000 years, the Ganges world would double in size. In a million years, it had become a huge monster. It was not inferior to the whirling sea, the center of the dimensional multiverse. This situation was shocking. Some ancient high-level sovereigns guessed that this might be related to the transfer of fate energy in the whirling dimensional multiverse. Every chaos era, every dimensional multiverse would undergo a transfer of fate energy. The place where fate energy converged was a miraculous place, like the whirling sea. This place would become the center of the entire dimensional multiverse, where countless experts from different worlds gathered. It was also the legendary origin. However, some top-notch high-level sovereigns and ancient true sages saw more. Not every high-level sovereign could sense the appearance of the void mother stream, especially the secret of the inner world nurtured in the Ganges world. There were too many unexplainable things in the Ganges world. Many ancient true sages were interested in investigating, but the fog of fate that the purple firmament true sage had set up a million years ago made many ancient true sages unable to see through it. As for whether the Ganges world could become a perfect immortal world, many top-notch high-level sovereigns were inclined to believe that it could not. They had never heard of two perfect immortal worlds being born in one-dimensional multiverse. However, some true sages believed that the Ganges world might have such an opportunity. Ordinary high-level sovereigns did not understand the meaning behind the appearance of the Void Mother Stream. The Void Mother Stream was rumored to be the embodiment of a void true sage. Many ancient true sages studied it and believed that it could be the truth of the world. Generally speaking, 50% of the worlds that appeared with the Void Mother Stream would become perfect immortal worlds. It was as if the growth of the Ganges world had reached its peak. On this day, boom, an earth-shattering sound came from the depths of the Ganges world. The huge sound shook the entire surface world of the Ganges world and even the whirling dimensional multiverse. Countless high-level sovereigns' expressions changed. Even the top-notch high-level sovereigns and true sages looked through billions of miles of space and time towards the Ganges world. The Ganges world has matured and is about to undergo its tribulation. Soon, the gazes of the true saints changed. A part of the truth had already been discovered by the tyrannical true gods. Not long after, the first-tier experts who were second only to the eternal true saints, the eternal dominators who had been paying attention to the changes in the Ganges world, understood the root of the changes. Many high-level sovereigns watched as the center of the eternal river world's 8 worlds suddenly caved in. It was as if the heavens and earth were collapsing, and the universe was tilting. Billions of miles of space-time collapsed, and the eternal river world's countless divine realms and heavenly realms were powerless to resist as they slid towards the cave-in area. Many high-level sovereigns were caught in the pit, and they tried to resist. However, under this terrifying force, it was as if they were shackled. A terrifying suction force appeared from the pit, pulling these high-level sovereigns towards the pit. Only a few high-level sovereigns of the Fifth Tribulation and above managed to escape from the center of the terrifying suction force. Vaguely, millions of miles of space-time collapsed at the center of the pit, revealing a terrifying, huge hole. Behind the hole, a corner of an extremely magnificent world was revealed. That world was so magnificent that even some high-level sovereigns of the Fifth Tribulation who had escaped the tribulation were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe their eyes. Rumble. It was like the loud sound of a dimensional universe collapsing, but also like the roar of a cosmic tide and the collapse of a world. At this moment, the expressions of many high-level sovereigns changed, and they raised their heads to look into the depths of space-time. Above their heads, in the depths of the dimensional universe, a passage to an unknown space-time suddenly opened. It was as if a terrifying flood had suddenly opened up, and an unparalleled aura connected to the Ganges world. Rumble. The eyes of the countless living beings of the eternal river world suddenly turned red. Even the most powerful overgods felt a terrifying killing intent in their hearts. Only the eternal heaven monarchs could barely protect a trace of their minds. Only the sovereigns could protect their friends and family by using their eternal holy power to slightly isolate this terrifying killing intent. The great tribulation of the chaos epic has reached its peak, triggering the Ganges world's own tribulation. It's starting to undergo a perfect tribulation. At this moment, the high-level sovereigns of the Ganges world who had undergone 5 tribulations and above were horrified. How can the Ganges world suddenly undergo a perfect tribulation? Is this a joke? In an instant, above the Ganges world, dozens of terrifying streams of light tore through space-time and bravely escaped from the Ganges world. Some high-level sovereigns of the 5th tribulation and above were practically risking their lives, as if there was an extremely terrifying existence behind them. A perfect tribulation of a giant world was a good thing. Once it passed, the world's power would increase tremendously. However, for some high-level sovereigns, if they were involved in a perfect tribulation, the consequences would be quite severe. Their own perfect tribulation would follow. Unless the high-level sovereigns were already prepared, no high-level sovereigns would be willing to be involved in such a terrifying tribulation. Some high-level sovereigns of the 5th tribulation and above fled. Among them were a few of Qin Feng's old acquaintances, Luya, the Ancient One, and the Taishang Dao ancestor of the primitive universe. There were also many major powers of the other dimensional universe, as well as high-level sovereigns of the true sages. One after another, pale figures appeared outside the Ganges world. Some of the unlucky high-level sovereigns were already infected by the terrifying aura of tribulation, and their faces were ashen or gloomy. It wouldn't be long before the perfect tribulation would naturally find them. Undergoing a perfect tribulation was extremely dangerous. Without a certain degree of certainty, high-level sovereigns would definitely not try it. However, by the time the remaining high-level sovereigns made their move, it was already too late. The terrifying tribulation was surging violently, and they were surrounded by boundless aura of tribulation. Even if they escaped from the Ganges world, this terrifying aura of tribulation would soon attract a perfect tribulation. How can this be? At this moment, many high-level sovereigns felt sullen and depressed. According to convention, after the great tribulation of a primal chaos era, when everything was renewed, the world would attract a perfect tribulation. At that time, the previous primal chaos era had just ended and the next primal chaos era had just begun. The aura of providence was at its peak, and it was also the easiest time to undergo a tribulation. Every world had its own origin, and there was an instinctive tendency to seek benefits and avoid harm. Now that the great tribulation of a primal chaos era had reached its peak, and a perfect world tribulation had erupted, 2 great tribulations would descend. Wasn't this courting death? Chapter 1973. In the depths of the exposed inner world. In the origin space, the 7-colored island had completely disappeared. Qin Feng was sitting cross-legged above the origin space. 9 pure, snow-like halos were vibrating behind his head, almost condensing into a solid state. In front of his chest, a golden halo rotated. Every time it rotated, it seemed to contain an immeasurable amount of power. At this moment, there was an extremely majestic power in Qin Feng's body. He seemed to have reached the pinnacle, and an aura that was above the dimensional great universe was being nurtured. Qin Feng had sunk into a pure state of enlightenment. At this moment, his soul realm was constantly trying to fuse with the flawless truth, which was close to perfection. The aura of creation and destruction intertwined on his body. The terrifying power contained in that weak body was frightening. Countless auras of calamity fell from the top of his head like a waterfall and entered his eternal holy body, his soul realm, and even his spirit sea world. That was the power of a perfect calamity. Although all of his attention was focused on the countless fusion between his soul realm and the flawless truth, Qin Feng was not unaware of the scene outside. He saw with his own eyes that he had automatically attracted a perfect calamity. He also saw that this action was like a chain that triggered the perfect calamity in the Ganges world. Countless high-level sovereigns cursed, and cursed in fear and anger. It was as if he could see it all. There is no need to mention how terrifying the perfect tribulation was. It contained all kinds of inconceivable changes. Not only did the eternal saint body fall, but the realm of the soul and even the unblemished truth suffered a terrifying impact. It contained countless traps and mysterious and powerful forces. Even if an ordinary high-level sovereign fell into it, their eternal holy body would wither, their soul realm would be distorted, and their flawless truth would be contaminated and led astray. However, at this moment, he had comprehended the mysteries of the dimensional heart and used the opportunity to deduce the flawless truth to the perfection realm. In Qin Feng's opinion, the perfect calamity that ordinary high-level sovereigns viewed as their lifelong enemy was already a daunting experience. After comprehending the flawless truth, in Qin Feng's eyes, no matter how terrifying the perfect great calamity was, it still had flaws. With the terrifying deduction ability of the flawless truth, he could break the perfect great calamity in the shortest time possible. At this moment, he had personally fallen into the perfect tribulation for only one reason, and that was to use the perfect tribulation to temper his flawless truth and truly deduce it to the perfected realm. At the same time, he tempered the flawless golden rings formed by the world of the spirit sea. Using the power of the perfect tribulation could save him a lot of time. Qin Feng was waiting. He was waiting for the 9 perfect tribulations to descend. Then he would officially begin to break through to the eternal true saint realm. That was where his greatest danger lay. Even if one had already become an eternal true sage, it was impossible to explain the mysterious state of the impact. In the multidimensional universe, there had been many eternal dominators who had attempted to break through to this realm in the past, but only one in 10 succeeded. Even if one had nurtured their eternal truth to the great perfection, they might not necessarily succeed. Qin Feng had already realized this when he reached the peak of the eternal dominator. If he succeeded, it would be fine. He would advance to the eternal true saint realm in one go. If he did not succeed, it would be over. His soul would be completely destroyed, and his true spirit would disappear in the vast multidimensional universe. 9 perfect tribulations. Qin Feng controlled them for about 100 years each time. Once 100 years passed, the power of the perfect tribulation would be broken. At the same time, the power of the next perfect tribulation would be guided. Qin Feng had almost passed through the first 7 tribulations in one go. When the 8th perfect tribulation descended, Qin Feng felt a trace of pressure and strain. Qin Feng felt the pressure and strain. And in the short span of 1,000 years, in the outside world of the Ganges River, 90% of the living beings had already died. Although it was only the first perfect tribulation of the Ganges world, it was indeed a catastrophe for many living beings below the Dominator realm. Countless living beings fell into a terrifying cycle of killing and reincarnation. Their minds were suppressed, and their 5 essences and 6 desires were expanded to the extreme. Countless true gods couldn't even recover their consciousness before they died. Many living beings died, but they didn't directly turn into nothingness. The life imprints of those who died in the perfect tribulation would be preserved. When a new era arrived, if the world could survive the tribulation, it would be reborn. However, for many true gods, they had lost all their memories. Their life imprints were baptized by the power of the perfect tribulation and reborn. This was no different from completely dying. As the Ganges world was enveloped in the perfect tribulation, the surface world had been completely devoured by the inner world. The huge world appeared in the eyes of the high-level dominators outside the world, as well as the eternal dominators and true sages outside the multidimensional universe. The huge foundation shocked all the top dominators and even the true sages. The Ganges world was too vast. The aura of the origin it emitted was simply too strong. However, very quickly, some of the eternal dominators and true sages felt something strange. A strange power was exposed as the inner world was exposed. It was almost impossible to hide. That surging power shook the entire multidimensional universe. The invisible power swept across. At this moment, many high-level dominators above the fifth tribulation standing in the Ganges world had goosebumps all over their bodies. Even the pupils of the seventh tribulation dominators constricted. They felt as if they couldn't resist the power that was surging out of the inner world. Dead silence. At this moment, all the high-level dominators in the whirling dimension universe were staring at the inner world in dead silence. This power is outside the whirling dimension universe. In the huge multidimensional universes, many top dominators and eternal dominators were watching the changes in the Ganges world. It's the power of an eternal dominator. Someone is transcending the ninth perfect tribulation. In the multidimensional universes, many extremely magnificent top high-level dominators looked in the direction of the Ganges world in shock. Among them were many preparatory true sage seeds who had comprehended a trace of the power of eternal truth. I'm afraid it's not just transcending the ninth perfect tribulation. He's probably going to break through to the eternal true sage realm in one go. In the depths of the distant and unknown multidimensional universes, many ancient true sages were deep in thought. Some of them were cold, and some of them were filled with killing intent. Many true sages could see further than ordinary dominators. In their eyes, in the depths of the inner world's origin, there was a figure with an extremely terrifying aura. It had even far surpassed the peak of the eternal dominator realm. The dense, eternal radiance on his body shook the multidimensional universes. In the whirling, perfect, immortal world, a figure dressed in monk robes suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze instantly locked onto the inner world, where there was a brilliant figure shrouded in dense, immortal radiance. Countless information about the inner world was immediately grasped by him. The figure of the dimensional heart flashed and disappeared. The whirling dimension universe actually gave birth to such a strange dimensional item like the dimensional heart. True sage whirling dimension's face twitched. At the same time, a huge wave of heartache and anger surged in her heart. A treasure like the dimensional heart was also extremely precious to an eternal true sage. A trace of gloominess and coldness appeared in his eyes. Like golden lightning, he locked onto the figure in the origin space. His gaze was extremely cold. How dare you play tricks under my nose? If you want to break through, you'll have to ask my permission first. Chapter 1974. Rumble. The whirling, perfect, immortal world seemed to be filled with billions of lightning bolts. The vast power shook, causing many high-level sovereigns and eternal sovereigns outside the dimension to look sideways. The powerful true saints turned their eyes and looked at the whirling, perfect, immortal world. There's a good show to watch. I'm afraid whirling won't nurture an eternal sovereign in her nest to break through to the eternal true saint realm. The eyes of the eternal true saints flashed with cold smiles. A terrifying power erupted instantly. A huge palm seemed to descend on the sky of the inner world from billions of space-time. It grabbed fiercely at the figure who was breaking through in the origin space. In the depths of the origin space, the terrifying power of calamity lingered around his body. In the depths of the void, there seemed to be a hole in the origin space of calamity, forming a long river of calamity and wrapping around the figure. Qin Feng was currently dealing with the ninth perfect tribulation with all his strength. The power of the ninth perfect tribulation was beyond his imagination. Even though he had comprehended the flawless truth to the great perfection realm, he still felt a huge pressure. Qin Feng could sense true Saint Whirling Sua's attack, but he didn't have the strength to do anything now. Not to mention that he didn't have the strength to do anything. Even if he was at the peak of the eternal sovereign state, he wouldn't be able to resist an eternal true saint. An eternal true saint was too powerful. Only an eternal true saint could fight against an eternal true saint. However, Qin Feng didn't panic. Although he didn't have any allies and didn't greet any eternal true saints, he still had a backer. However, the terrifying palm crossed space-time and grabbed him from an unbelievable angle. The huge pressure and the suffocating despair made him feel like an ant still made his heart tremble. But soon, under the gazes of countless high-level sovereigns and eternal sovereigns, the huge palm collapsed silently. Visible to the naked eye, there seemed to be a trace of purple gas that suddenly emerged from space-time and wrapped around the huge palm. It was just a circle, but wherever it passed, the huge palm collapsed inch by inch. In front of the whirling, perfect, immortal world, there seemed to be a purple, auspicious aura floating down and turning into a Taoist in a gray robe with purple patterns on his sleeves. The Taoist was expressionless. Just by appearing in the whirling, perfect, immortal world, it seemed like time and space-time had frozen. Purple firmament true sage. In Wairo's perfect, immortal world, true Saint Wairo looked at the gray-robed Taoist with a gloomy face. Her eyes were filled with anger and fear. Although they were all eternal true sages, there were still differences in strength. Only by entering the eternal true sage world would one know about the vast world beyond the eternal true sage realm. True sage Zi Xiao had become a sage early, and his strength was one of the strongest even among the true sages. Qin Feng is one of my disciples. I hope that true Saint Pessoa can give me some face and stop now. True Saint Purple Clouds lifted his head and looked at true Saint Pessoa calmly. This true saint no longer had his usual laziness and drowsiness. It was as if he was the supreme law of heaven and earth. His gaze was bone-chillingly cold and domineering. True Saint Pessoa's face twitched, and the veins in her eyes popped out. Qin Feng had stirred up trouble in his territory and had even stolen the dimensional heart, the supreme treasure of the whirling dimension Great Cosmos, as well as the secret of the whirling dimension Great Cosmos. Yet true Saint Purple Clouds was asking him to stop so openly. True Saint Pessoa had never suffered such a great loss before. Anger erupted in her heart like a volcano. As a true saint, she had never been afraid of anyone. So what if the purple firmament true sage was a veteran true sage? She was about to explode in anger. However, in the next moment, true Saint Pessoa was stunned. Then, a cold smile appeared in her eyes, and her anger suddenly disappeared. True Saint Purple Clouds looked at all of this with a strange gaze. At this moment, true Saint Pessoa's gaze turned cold. True Saint Purple Clouds, so what if I don't do anything? Do you think the other true sages will easily allow other eternal sovereigns to become eternal true saints? True Saint Purple Clouds raised his eyebrows, and his eyes flickered. True Saint Pessoa was right. Where there were people, there would be war. Even among 300 eternal true sages, there would be fighting. True Saint Purple Clouds and the small alliance he was in had their opponents. Even in the Five Extremes Alliance, where true Saint Purple Clouds was in, not all the eternal true sages would want a new eternal true saint to be born under true Saint Purple Clouds. Rumble. In an instant, one after another, earth-shattering explosions shook the whirling dimension Great Cosmos. True Saint Purple Clouds raised his head and saw that 3 to 4 terrifying cracks had suddenly appeared in the whirling dimension Great Cosmos. For invisible rays of brilliant divine light flew out from the depths of the void and attacked the figure in the depths of the origin space of the inner world. Another eternal true saint had made his move. Moreover, 4 eternal true saints had made their move at the same time. In the midst of the divine light, there was a multicolored holy pearl in the middle of a colorful divine radiance. The sharp light cut through time and space and broke open the universe. In another direction, in the blazing white light, there was a tearing sword light that cut through the multidimensional universe. The other two rays of brilliance were obscure and indescribable. However, there was a miraculous power that could turn the impossible into the possible, flashing and shaking the multidimensional universe. Under the power of the four eternal true saints, even the whirling dimension great cosmos was immediately torn apart. If not for true Saint Pesua's oppression, there would have been a huge disaster spreading. Outside the eternal river world, many high-level sovereigns and eternal sovereigns looked at this scene in horror. For mysterious eternal true saints from an unknown space-time had made their move one after another. They were doomed. At this moment, many high-level sovereigns turned pale. Although the four eternal true saints had killed an unknown eternal sovereign who was trying to break through to the eternal true saint realm, many sovereigns hoped that the unknown eternal sovereign would be able to break through the obstruction. This kind of terrifying shroud made them feel despair. Even the disciples of the true sage sect were speechless. The other party was also a disciple of a true saint. Did this mean that if they reached this stage one day, they would also encounter such an inexplicable attack? In the origin space, Qin Feng was completely immersed in the ninth perfect calamity. Regardless of whether it was his mind or the realm of his soul, he was completely immersed in the final breakthrough. The ninth perfect calamity was terrifying. Even though he was prepared, Qin Feng still underestimated this perfect calamity. Its power was beyond his imagination and almost dragged him into a desperate situation. At this moment, he was completely immersed in this confrontation and no longer had the energy to pay attention to the outside world. Perhaps he still had the energy to pay attention to the outside world, but Qin Feng knew very well that the eternal true saints outside were no longer something he could deal with. Thus, he simply immersed himself in the ninth perfect calamity with all his might. Tomorrow is the finale, then. The new book will be released at the end of this month. Many old friends have asked for the title of the book, and the title will be released very soon. However, because it involves the subject matter, it will not be announced for the time being. Before it is released, there will be a notice at the back of this book. Chapter 1975. In front of Whirling Sua's perfect immortal world, True Sage Whirling Sua sneered at Purple Cloud True Sage. She recognized the origins of the four eternal true sages. They were four eternal true sages from outside the West River Dimension. They were also from the same alliance. The West River Dimension was around this dimensional sea. It included dozens of dimensional seas and thousands of dimensional great universes. The four sovereigns of the West River Alliance and Purple Cloud True Sage's five-level alliance were old rivals. Even Purple Cloud True Sage could only watch from the sidelines when the four powerful True Sages from alternate dimensions attacked. Qin Feng, do you think that with Purple Cloud True Sage's protection, you can break through to the True Sage realm without any worries? You are too naive. This dimensional sea has already given birth to 300 eternal true sages. There is no need for more eternal true sages to be born. True Sage Whirling Saw looked in the direction of the inner world with a cold gaze. Qin Feng had to die. The huge Ganges world could not fall into the hands of the other true sages. If Whirling Sua's perfect world could be swallowed, she would be able to advance further. One had to know that a perfect immortal world was only the first step on the path of immortality. Even perfect immortal worlds had differences in quality. Purple Cloud True Sage was expressionless. He did not seem to see Qin Feng's desperate situation at all. He took out an item from his sleeve and threw it into the void. A stream of light shot up into the sky. True Sage Whirling Sua's eyes narrowed. She could clearly see that it was a talisman. A talisman. It was gray in color, but for some reason, True Sage Whirling Sua felt a bone-chilling fear when she looked at this talisman. True Sage Whirling Sua was at a loss for what to do. It could make an eternal true sage feel fear. That was impossible. Eternal true sages were above all dimensional great universes. How could they feel fear? Rumble. It was as if heaven and earth were falling apart. Hearing this terrifying sound, all the eternal sovereigns and eternal true sages in the Ganges world felt as if they were suddenly pulled into a terrifying river. The surging river descended from an unknown dimensional great universe, drowning the souls of all living beings and even their fates. Gudon Gudon, with the sound of water splashing. Many high-level sovereigns saw the four eternal true sages attacking the eternal river world in the distant dimensional great cosmos suddenly disappear. Above the pitch-black flood river, there were four more figures. They were like mortals who were drowning, struggling in the endless and glorious black flood river. It's the Void Talisman, the Void True Saint's Talisman. Where did this purple firmament true sage come from? Why does he have the Void True Sage's Talisman? At this moment, the eternal true saints in the various dimensional great cosmoses who had yet to make a move frowned. There were even many eternal true saints who revealed a trace of extreme fear in their eyes. It was as if the fear had seeped into their bones. Eternal true saints were immortal and indestructible. Even if some of the older eternal true saints were stronger than some of the newer eternal true saints, they would not necessarily be so fearful. However, the Void True Saints were different. Like the few oldest true saints, the Void True Saints were at the top of the pyramid among the 300 eternal true saints. There was also news that this ancient eternal true saint, like the few strongest true saints, had already stepped on the path above the eternal true saint, far surpassing ordinary eternal true saints. Unbelievably powerful. In the Maytao dimension great cosmos, the Panga Divine Emperor and many other true gods witnessed this scene. Their eyebrows twitched, and their eyes flashed with a blazing light. Just as they had imagined, the eternal true saint realm was definitely not the limit of cultivation. Above the Ganges world, it was as if everyone had agreed to fall into a deathly silence. With the power of the Void True Saint descending, even though many eternal true saints had the intention to kill, they had no choice but to stand by and watch. The Void Mother Stream that was revealed was too terrifying. If they acted rashly and were pulled into the Void Mother Stream, there would be a lot of fun to watch. Although they would not be killed, the eternal true saints cared about their pride. Moreover, the peak eternal dominator in the eternal river world who was trying to break through to the eternal true saint realm might not be able to. The purple firmament true saint looked at the eternal river world. The Void Talisman had temporarily trapped the West River Four Sages. Whether they could succeed in one fell swoop would depend on Qin. If he succeeds, the non-Li Chu dimension will have another eternal true saint. They will have an overwhelming advantage against the West River Alliance. Rumble. It was as if thunder had exploded. The surging tribulations in the eternal river world seemed to have been reduced by more than 80%. A grand auspicious aura filled the air, reducing the tribulations by a huge amount. Not only that, but a huge golden auspicious light emanated from the eternal river world and filled the whirling dimension great cosmos. The huge chaos epic great tribulation seemed to have been weakened by this golden auspicious light. He had already passed the 9th perfect great tribulation. Outside the eternal river world, many high-level sovereigns had obvious looks of envy in their eyes. High-level sovereigns who had passed the 9th perfect great tribulation were called eternal sovereigns. The eternal dominators were no longer suppressed by the perfect great tribulation. They no longer had to worry about not being able to pass the perfect great tribulation one day. Although they were weaker than the eternal true saints, they were still considered eternal overlords. Every eternal dominator ruled over many dimensional great cosmoses. Although the eternal true saints were strong, there were very few of them compared to the many dimensional great cosmoses. In fact, many-dimensional great cosmoses only knew about the power of the eternal dominators and did not know about the existence of the eternal true saints. At this moment, in many-dimensional great cosmoses, many top sovereigns looked at the eternal river world. Many of them had hopeful looks in their eyes, but at the same time, there were some contradictions. Many top sovereigns hoped that the person who was trying to break through to the true saint realm would succeed, but at the same time, they also hoped that the other party would fail. The eternal true saint realm was too far away. This was the lifelong dream of many top sovereigns. However, it was not a good thing for many high-level sovereigns if there was an eternal true saint above them. The top sovereigns seemed to be holding their breaths, waiting for the final moment. Would they succeed or die? It has begun. In an unknown space-time, an eternal true saint who was wearing a flame-colored long robe and whose entire body was like a scarlet flame suddenly spoke. As the eternal true saint finished speaking around this dimensional sea, in the eyes of the eternal true saints and even the eternal true saints, the eternal river world, the dimensional great cosmos, and the hundreds of surrounding dimensional great cosmoses seemed to have suddenly received an inexplicable, invisible impact. Time froze for an instant, and an invisible mighty force caused the surrounding dozens of dimensional seas to shake violently. It seemed to recover in the next second. Without a sound, a figure appeared directly outside the eternal river world and landed in front of the many high-level sovereigns. There was no warning at all. At this moment, even the many eternal true saints lost the ability to capture the movement trajectory of this figure. The moment this figure appeared, the surrounding dozens of dimensional seas stopped shaking. Large areas of the dimensional seas seemed to have suddenly gained something. Countless laws and dimensions seemed to have undergone an inexplicable and unreachable change. His body seemed to be entwined with endless mysteries. Just his appearance alone was enough to infect every top sovereign and eternal true saint in the endless space-time and infinite dimensions. They felt that he was incomparably sacred, incomparably mysterious, and unfathomable. Eternal true saint. At this moment, everyone's gazes were fixed on him. They were both shocked and expected. And the plot has ended here, but there will be an epilogue to fill in the gaps. After that, there will be a new book. I will release a new book tomorrow. Everyone, please pay attention. Chapter 1976. The battle for the Ganges River world ended with the appearance of the new eternal true sage. The Ganges River world was engulfed in front of many high-level sovereigns and became nourishment for the new eternal true sage world. Although many high-level sovereigns returned empty-handed, the black tortoise true sage's voice reverberated throughout the dimensional sea and the thousands of dimensional universes. The new true sage, the disciple of the purple firmament true sage, managed to break through the obstacles and become an eternal true sage. This greatly encouraged many high-level sovereigns. Many high-level sovereigns were moved and tried to join the new sacred sect, but they were still unwilling to leave the dimensional universe. Some were waiting for the new true sage to preach. According to the old customs, every eternal true sage would preach after attaining the Tao. Firstly, it was to announce the birth of a new eternal true sage to many dimensional universes and to broadcast the might of the true sage. Secondly, it was to feed the gods. The place where the Ganges world was located had already disappeared. In its place was an even more magnificent and vast world. This tyrannical world floated in the primordial chaos. The vast power made many high-level sovereigns feel a kind of soul-stirring power. The Spirit Sea world had gone through 9 perfect tribulations in one go. Most of the living beings inside had already entered the cycle of reincarnation. At this time, it was empty. Only a few living beings had survived the 9 perfect tribulations under the protection of Chinfeng, the new eternal true sage. Other than the divine concubines, there were some direct gods, such as the gods of the Qin family, the 8th scenery world master, and some experts above the supreme god realm in the spirit sea world. Most of the gods entered the cycle of reincarnation, and their imprints were preserved. They would be reborn until one day they found their memories and transformed. Ever since he became an eternal true sage, Qin Feng had been in seclusion to familiarize himself with his new realm and complete his eternal true soul. In fact, at the moment of advancing to an eternal true sage, Qin Feng, who had successfully advanced to an eternal true sage, was also a little confused. It was like looking at flowers in the fog and looking at the moon, the fusion of his soul realm and the eternal truth. At that moment, he thought that he had died in the huge impact. However, a clear and bright reason persisted in the darkness. It was like one chaotic epoch after another. Qin Feng even thought that he had become numb until the end of time when a new light appeared in the world. After sensing the outside world again, Qin Feng realized that he had completed the mysterious promotion and become a new eternal true sage. In the outside world, less than an instant had passed. The big sound is silent. The elephant is formless. On the immortal world throne, standing at the peak of the celestial court, Qin Feng looked out, and countless heaven domains and god domains floated beneath his gaze. Looking further into the distance, the mighty chaos epic calamity was surging in his eyes, seemingly spreading to the horizon. Even the few hidden worlds in the whirling dimension great cosmos had nowhere to hide. Even further away, a huge world that was even more majestic than the spirit sea world appeared. A vast and mighty aura pervaded the air. One could faintly see the benevolence of all things and the destruction of all things. That huge world seemed to be formed by a river formed by countless rays of light. In the river, there were countless Buddhas forming a pure land, preaching scriptures and demonstrating the three wonders. In his eyes, Qin Feng could even see many people. In the past, the Buddhas of the Western sect, the Great Thunderclap Temple, and 14 Buddhas were listening to a Buddhist sect leader preach Bodhi in a pure land of a Buddhist country. After the chaotic world merged into the Ganges River world, the major powers of the chaotic world fell apart. The Tao Fathers of the Celestial sect swam to the southeast and sought refuge with the Pangu Saint Emperor, taking root and sprouting in the whirling dimension great cosmos. Qin Feng originally thought that the Western sect of Buddhism had been dismembered by the many sovereigns in the Great Change. He did not expect that it had entered the whirling dimension great cosmos. In the past, Qin Feng had become the disciple of Venerable Sanzang. He had even learned a section of the Western sect of Buddhism. Now, Sanzang had become the disciple of his sworn enemy. Qin Feng could not help but feel that the world was unpredictable. However, this was reasonable. According to Qin Feng, true sage whirling dimension great cosmos was one of the origins of Buddhism. The Buddhist sect that appeared in the chaotic world was originally created by a high-level sovereign under true sage whirling dimension great cosmos. Qin Feng's gaze turned to one of the heavens in the spirit sea world. His gaze landed on a young girl in pink. Not only was the Western sect of Buddhism inextricably linked to the whirling dimension great cosmos, but this young girl in pink also had an extremely deep connection with true sage whirling dimension great cosmos. This connection was only understood when Qin Feng became an eternal true sage and saw through the truth. It turned out that this girl was a disciple of true sage whirling dimension great cosmos. She was one of the daughters of a high-level 6 tribulation sovereign. However, that high-level 6 tribulation sovereign had countless children. For resources, the various sons and daughters fought fiercely. The young girl in pink was deeply loved by that high-level 6 tribulation sovereign and was envied by the various sons and daughters. She was framed and expelled. Now, this girl had become the master of one of the heavens in the spirit sea world. As the natal world of Qin Feng, who had just become an eternal true sage, the spirit sea world would become a perfect, immortal world sooner or later. As the master of one of the heavens in a perfect, immortal world, her authority was definitely unimaginable. Qin Feng was now in full seclusion. The evolution of the spirit sea world was handed over to Hong Lian, who had already been conferred the title of God Empress. He also instructed the other god concubines to assist her. Running a perfect, immortal world in the future would allow one to be in close contact with the most fundamental laws of heaven and earth in the dimensional great cosmos. The benefits from this would make one drool with envy. Qin Feng had nothing to do now. He spent most of his time in seclusion, comprehending the mysteries of the eternal true soul and perfecting it. At the same time, he used his natal world to start condensing the body of an eternal true sage. During his free time, he enjoyed the bliss of family time with his wives and concubines. The dimensional tree had already been born. The 7 Khanate gourds each obtained the essence of Qin Feng's dimensional tree and gave birth to 7 unique living beings. It could be said that he had a lot of children. As time passed, many of his good friends and seniors from Xingqian School in the past returned. The heavenly courts started to have more vitality, and the scene of prosperity became more apparent after the Great Tribulation. On this day, Qin Feng received a talisman and left the perfect, immortal world alone. He appeared in a completely foreign dimensional gap. In this completely foreign dimensional gap, there was a huge floating island. On the island, the eternal, immortal world was condensed into radiance. He stepped onto the island. Under an ancient tree, a figure appeared in front of Qin Feng. Master, Lin Wei had a respectful expression. The owner of the figure was none other than Purple Firmament True Sage. Purple Firmament True Sage turned around and pointed at the stone table under the ancient tree. Have a seat. Qin Feng, I claim to have 3,000 disciples and 3 eternal dominators. As your master, I'm very pleased that you were able to surpass everyone and become an eternal true sage first. Purple Firmament True Sage's gaze was indifferent, and there was a slight smile on his face. Out of the 300 true sages, only a small portion of them could produce an eternal true sage. He was the only one who could teach an eternal true sage. This honor was one of a kind, even in the countless great universes of dimensions, or even in the higher realms. However, since we're both eternal true sages, we're on the same path. You don't have to call me your master anymore. You could just call me a comrade. Without you, there wouldn't be the black tortoise now. Qin Feng shook his head slightly. Master, please don't look down on me. Qin Feng had always been a person who clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. He would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. However, he would repay the kindness of Emil 100 times over. He was indebted to the Purple Cloud True Sage for imparting Tao to him. Furthermore, the Purple Cloud True Sage had helped him fend off a few Eternal True Sages when he was at his most dangerous. How could he erase the Purple Cloud True Sage's kindness just because his status had changed? Seeing Qin Feng's insistence, Purple Firmament True Sage's gaze moved slightly, and he smiled. You fool. Then, he continued, this time, I've summoned you here to impart my teachings to you for the last time. Let me ask you, when are you going to move out of the whirling dimension universe? Currently, I haven't found a suitable place to settle down. I'm just waiting for a place to settle down in the 5 extreme dimensional rivers before moving out of the whirling dimension universe. Qin Feng's expression was solemn. After becoming an eternal true sage, Qin Feng had already jumped out of the mold of the dimensional universe. He also understood the situation in the dimensional sea. 300 true sages surrounded one dimensional sea after another. The dimensional sea was like a huge ocean, and every huge ocean was surrounded by countless dimensional rivers of different sizes. For example, the 5 extreme dimensional river where the 5 extreme alliance was located was a huge tributary, and the tributaries were all huge dimensional universes. The Mi Luo dimension universe where the Panga Divine Emperor was located was in the 5 extreme dimensional river where the 5 extreme alliance was located. For example, the West River Alliance, an old rival of the 5 extreme-dimensional river, was not far from the 5 extreme-dimensional river. The tributaries of the two-dimensional rivers were showing signs of merging, so the battle was more intense. The Whirling Dimension universe was in the Delta region where the two-dimensional rivers intersected. True Sage Whirling Dimension was also one of the true sages of the West River Alliance. It was inevitable that Qin Feng, a new true sage, would be in danger if he continued to stay in the Whirling Dimension universe. Qin Feng chose to move his world into the dimensional rivers under the Limitless Alliance as a sign of his allegiance. Although Purple Firmament True Sage had been smiling all this while, he was a little more carefree at this moment. Forget it, this is your own choice. I just want to tell you that even if an eternal true sage is known to be eternal and immortal, you can't do whatever you want on the path of cultivation. The path of cultivation is endless. Teacher, is there really a path above the eternal true sage? Qin Feng looked at Purple Firmament True Sage with bright eyes. Purple Firmament True Sage smiled gently, shook his head, and nodded. Qin Feng, you have already become an eternal true sage and have eternal time. You will have time to explore that realm in the future. You just have to remember one thing. Eternal true sage is not the end, but the beginning. Author's note, this is the end of the book. There are no more regrets. Next is the new book, my God-tier mobile assistant. Here, I will say that this new book is not a system stream. Please collect it and vote for it. Heaven Earth Guild will continue to work hard and strive for a higher peak. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.